Hey guys, welcome to Did You Get That on Film? On this podcast, we deep dive into horror movies, and so it is full of explicit content as well as spoilers. Please be advised. Now, let's get to the show.
This is Did You Get That on Film, where we discuss characters in terrible situations that we will never find ourselves in. I'm your host, DP, and with me always is my co host, someone who has no interest in looking into the eyes of the Miles County clown, my friend Ruth. How's it going, Ruth?
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a brand new episode. I think you might have given it away with that one.
Well, I want to get into it because I'm just ready to talk about it because there's so much conversation. And I feel that we on our social medias have been very mum about it because we knew that this was when we were going to have to record. And we haven't even talked about it as friends. It's going to be your first time hearing my thoughts, my first time hearing your thoughts.
Yes. So, in case you guys are wondering if you don't have any idea what the hell we're talking about today we're talking about Terrifier 3. It shouldn't be any surprise. It's Christmas time again, and we thought that this would be fun to do because it's new. It's a Terrifier movie and it's a holiday movie. It just kind of felt really right to do this one. Will it be a new Christmas classic? I guess we shall see.
There's so much to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about. So, Terrifier 3, it was released this year, so 2024. It was written, directed, and edited by Damien Leone. Terrifier 3 is the sequel to Terrifier 2. So it is the third movie centered solely around Art the Clown. So there's Terrifier, Terrifier 2, Terrifier 3. And it is the fourth feature length film to feature the character. So the other being the anthology film All Hallows Eve. And then All Hallows Eve incorporated footage from Damien Leone's 2008 short film, The Ninth Circle, which also features a little tiny bit of Art the Clown, as well as the 2011 short film Terrifier, which also features Art the Clown. And then, so this movie came out this year and it was a massive success. Hugely, hugely successful. But because it did so well, Damien Leone did announce that there is going to be a Terrifier 4 coming out, which we shouldn't be that surprised by. I'm not entirely sure when it is coming out. I do suspect that they'll probably start working on that sooner than later. But yeah, it is definitely coming. And apparently, I am not entirely sure, but apparently it's supposed to be the end of the Art the Clown saga, if I'm not mistaken. I think he said that in an interview.
Beautiful.
Well, we'll see. And one final note. We have actually covered thus far All Hallows Eve. It was episode 34. We released that on Halloween of this year, so 10/31/24. We also did Terrifier 1. It was our fourth episode. So we released that one on 10/24/23 if you guys are interested. And then Terrifier 2 was our eighth episode. So we released that one on 11/21/23 if you guys want to go back and listen to those. If you are someone who relies on us to kind of summarize the movies for you, to kind of give you the scoop, if you feel like you are somebody that will probably never watch the Terrifier movies, I don't blame you. They're definitely not for everyone. But I definitely have to say that if you are someone like that and you have not listened to those episodes, I would at the very least go back and listen to our Terrifier 2 episode because I know that people in my family that don't really like horror, but like just listen to us exclusively, if you're jumping in and you missed that episode and you've never watched these movies, you are going to be pretty lost with this movie. I will say that you would at the very least have to watch or listen to our episode on Terrifier 2 to understand what's happening in this story. And then it wouldn't hurt to watch or listen to our episode on Terrifier 1 because there is some backstory there. But yes, so just be warned, you need the foundation for this one. This is definitely one that pulls heavily on the movie before it. But other than that, I didn't have anything else to add for the beginning. Was there anything you wanted to add before we got started?
No, let's start. Let's get into this, please.
Let's just jump right on in then. And it is a bit of a long one. It's not as long as Terrifier 2, but it's not as tight and short as Terrifier 1 either.
What? It's like 30-minute difference?
So Terrifier 2 was it was only 2 hours and 18 minutes.
Are you sure?
I'm looking it up right now. Terrifier 2 felt very long, and that was an issue with it. It was long as fuck, and Damien Leone promised that this one wouldn't be nearly as long. So, like, comparatively, All Hallows Eve was an hour and 23 minutes. Terrifier 1 was an hour and 25 minutes. Terrifier 2 was 2 hours and 18 minutes. And then Terrifier 3 was 2 hours and 5 minutes. So, it's a little bit shorter. I will say it doesn't quite feel as long as Terrifier 2. Terrifier 2, drug. No offense. I mean, we were pretty open about how we felt about that. The runtime was outrageous.
Crazy.
Yeah. It was just a little bit unnecessary for it to be that long, in our opinion. But this one, I will have to say, he did try to cut it down, and it did help a lot because apparently it was supposed to be a lot longer than it was. Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
So, the movie opens on a quaint little suburban house, totally decked out in Christmas lights. It is the middle of the night, so everyone is sleeping. We get a shot of a mom, Jennifer, and a dad, Mark. They're sleeping in their bed when their bedroom door opens. It is their little girl, Juliet, aka Jules. She tells her mom that there is someone on the roof. She heard footsteps. So the mom and especially the dad are very dismissive of Jules because it is 3:30 in the morning. So the mom takes Juliet back to her bed, but Juliet is convinced that it is Santa on the roof. Like, she knows for sure that someone is up there. She just is not sure who, but her little brain is piecing together that it is Santa because it's Christmas time, of course. But her mom ends up making up a bullshit story about how it's probably one of Santa's elves prepping the house for Santa's arrival. And poor tiny little Juliet is just eating the story up instead of seeing footsteps on the roof as the red flag that they are. So she asks her mom if she could please leave out some cookies for Santa's little elf. And the mom promises her that she will if Juliet goes to sleep right this very minute. And the mom, true to her word, she does keep her promise. She heads to the kitchen and she leaves out some cookies and milk. But on her way back upstairs, she notices, in my opinion, another glaring red fucking flag. The front door is slightly ajar, which is insane to me. I would have had the police there. She's very, very calm about this.
I don't know how to approach this stuff. Do you just be very like dismissive of it from the beginning because they're so careless? Or do you try to explain it in a sense of it's a horror movie so they have to be somewhat aloof? Because I'm just like, we're doing this shit again, right? You know, it's just, they told you, she's like, I heard someone on the roof, and you're like, no. And then you're like, the door's open.
Okay.
Must not be anything.
Dante,
All right. Do your thing, man. Do your thing, cuz.
Oh my god, I'm gonna pass away from the cringe. I totally understand what you're saying. I totally understand where you're coming from. I think that we've talked about this before. At a certain point in horror movies, we know that poor decision making is in itself kind of a staple
Mhm.
because we know that Dante, if we were in this movie, we would not be in these situations straight up.
No.
I don't think that I am like a genius. I don't think that I am like better than anybody, but I'm telling you right now that I wouldn't be in this situation. There's no way that I would have laid my head on that pillow and gotten into a deep sleep. REM would have lost me that night.
It's like your religion.
I am so glad that you caught that reference. Yes.
That's what friends are for.
Yes. But so the way that the movie makes it seem like this is even plausible, okay? It's plausible that this door could be open, the little girl heard footsteps, is that apparently Jennifer's husband Mark leaves the door unlocked. It's like a thing that he does. So she kind of scolds him about it, but I felt like the door wasn't unlocked.
It was open.
Yeah,
I don't believe in a jar. I don't know what that means. Fuck all a jar. That bitch was open.
I no, yeah. If it's
Not
not closed, it's open.
if it's
Yes,
not locked, it's open. You got my
right.
damn door open.
Dante, I am so fanatical about making sure that my doors are locked and the alarms are on. Sometimes I wake up out of my sleep, and if I think that maybe I forgot to lock the door or turn the alarm on, I'll just check them all anyway. And it's like such a difficult thing because it's like we have to accept this in order to move forward. We're only
Yes.
in the first 6 minutes.
Right.
But we just have to accept this, and this is poor decision making, and I know how you feel because I have a feeling I know how you feel about the rest of the movie. It's like when you see little things like this that are so dumb that you can't relate to, it kind of makes you a little wary because you're like, well, what the fuck kind of decisions are they about to make moving forward? Like, is it going to be good writing where it's like, well, any that could have happened to anybody? Or is it going to be shit like this where it's like, no.
It's like the movie is all these movies are very engulfed in like 80s style writing
Yes.
where it's like the draw is the gore,
Yes.
the draw is the villain.
Yes.
And I think we are very it's like Scream like conscious where we're like, okay, we're rooting for the final girl.
We're rooting for this person that's smart enough to stay alive.
Right. Because like take like Casey from Scream 96. You're rooting for Casey even when you've seen it before. You're always like because at least Casey is doing things that you feel like are her trying to save her life.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way your kid can come in and say, "I heard footsteps," and then you go downstairs and the door is open, and you're not like, "We need to get the fuck out of here. I need to make a call. Somebody's in the house. Somebody broke in the house." Obviously,
Yeah.
those things just go together.
Yeah.
Just finish because it's the husband's so fucking
No,
aggravating.
I mean, I definitely agree with you, and I don't want to get too bogged down in this
One
one
scene, I know,
little spot.
but it's a start. It's the start
But
of
what you're saying
everybody.
makes a lot of sense.
It's the start of them of so many people who are unconnected doing some of the most dumbest, just like no situational awareness. And this is the start of it. That door was open.
Yes.
She literally opened the door to bullshit.
Yeah. No, and it's like you make such a good point. That is such a good way of wording it. Is like this movie is really steeped in like an 80s writing style. These movies, the Terrifier movies, are not plot driven movies. They are gore driven movies, and it's the whole point of them is essentially what is Art gonna do next? How is Art going to top his last kill? And I appreciate that to some extent, because I do, I think that Art the Clown is a great villain. I think that Damien Leone really found a really unique winning villain. It's been a really long time since we got a really iconic villain. And
Mm.
so I think that Damien Leone should be proud of that. I think he's going to go down in history as someone having created a really iconic villain. We haven't had a ghost face in a long time.
Mm.
So it's like I totally respect that what Damien Leone is doing, but it's still it's exactly like what you said. It's very steeped in that 80s style writing. It's very Friday the 13th type writing.
Yeah.
Like they have to make bad decisions to keep the plot going.
Well, it's just like, damn.
Exactly. But yeah, so let's keep going. So, door's locked. She ends up scolding her husband Mark about leaving the door unlocked. He really doesn't give a shit. I'm not a fan of Mark, but she asks him if in the morning can he eat the cookies because she left them out for Juliet and she wants Juliet to wake up in the morning before she goes to school and think that Santa's elf really came and ate these cookies. So Mark promises to do it, but I feel like I need to reiterate this guy is an asshole. So I'm just going to put that out there. He has like 40 seconds of screen time, but it's bad. And I get it. He's sleepy. It's 3:30 in the morning.
No, you the man of the house, man. If she was like the door was open and it didn't click in your head, like damn, the door was open and there was footsteps.
Yeah, Dante, I agree. Yes. What the fuck are you doing? Get the fuck up. Neither one of them are practicing any survival skills right now. There's no self-preservation going on here. Nobody even checks. Nobody even came up with the idea was like, "Well, let me just check the house." No. These people are in for a rude awakening.
Literally.
No, Dante, I mean that quite literally. So Jennifer kisses him. They go back to sleep. They go back to sleep. I want to reiterate. So meanwhile, in Juliet's room, she is still awake and she starts hearing some noise from downstairs. So she tiptoes downstairs, and from the stairs, she sees a shadow of a person, and she is convinced that it is Santa Claus. So she excitedly runs upstairs to wake up her brother Timmy, who's just a bit older than her. I would say that this little girl is maybe like 7 or 8,
Mhm.
and Timmy's like 10. But Timmy isn't budging because, again, it is like 4 in the morning at this point. So she decides to head downstairs alone, and from the stairwell she can see Santa, or who she thinks is Santa, in his suit, standing really creepily. I thought that they did a good job with this scene. The way that this Santa is standing there, like just stark still, staring at this Christmas tree, is really unsettling. And I also feel like she gets the sense that it's like unsettling, right? Like she's like, something about this isn't right.
Well, yeah, because now she's not excited.
Yeah, exactly. So she sees him standing there. He's not moving. She can only see his back, and we as the audience can also only see his back. But she does see that he has a large red sack on the floor, and she makes a little bit of noise, and Santa is kind of like made aware of her presence, so he kind of moves a little bit, but again, he doesn't turn around. She doesn't see him. He just kind of like makes a movement that suggests that he knows that she's there. So she decides that she's going to run behind a door to watch him. So that's when Santa reaches into his large red sack and he pulls out an axe. As he grips it in his hand, we can see that his white gloves are already stained red with blood. Now, this whole time, we're watching Santa from the back. No one has seen his face yet, not us or the little girl. But once he has the axe, he turns and he heads upstairs as Juliet watches. And the way that it's filmed is very clever because we still haven't seen his face at this point. The camera is almost, I guess, maybe like a little bit at eye level with Juliet. So we're seeing Santa's body, we're seeing him holding this axe, but we're watching him not really knowing who this is. So he turns, he heads upstairs. Juliet's watching him. Once Santa is upstairs, he heads into Timmy's room first. And Juliet, who is watching from the stairs, she can't see exactly what Santa is doing inside her brother's room. But she and we, as the audience, just hear Santa. I mean, I don't know if she understands exactly what's happening, but it's the sound of Santa wailing on Timmy with this axe. I mean, giving it to him. It sounds disgusting. So we can't see it, but it's we're getting the sense that it's very bloody. The subtitles describe it as a flesh squelching sound.
Hmm.
Yeah, but he is killed off screen. Timmy is dead. So that's when Santa heads into Jennifer and Mark's room, who are fast asleep. Not a care in the world.
They don't hear any of this?
That's what I'm saying. It's Timmy's death sounds loud and violent to me.
You didn't hear, so you don't hear people on the stairs. You don't hear people on the roof. You don't hear nothing.
No.
What you good for? The little girl need to have a mortgage in her name. How you sleep that hard when you have children?
I agree. Additionally, it's a grown man on the stairs. And the way that their rooms are laid out, it's like the parents' rooms are just like right above the stairs. Like it's not like they're far away or down a long hall. It's a grown man walking up their stairs with an axe. And I don't think that much time has passed since they had to get up with Juliet. So you just went straight to sleep. You didn't lose 10 minutes of sleep.
Guess because he said, like, he was like, I have to be up in 3 hours. But it's like, come on, dude.
Well, okay, let's keep going.
Yes.
So now at this point, the camera, it's kind of like at, I guess, about eye level. It's as if they're crouching on the side of the bed where Jennifer is. So the focal point of the shot is really Jennifer, and Mark is sleeping behind her. But we watch kind of over her as Santa enters the room. He's on Mark's side of the bed, so behind her. We can see kind of in the background that he again just starts wailing on Mark with this axe. Mark doesn't even have time to scream. He just is making these gurgling noises because he's getting really fucked around with this axe. And that's the first on-screen kill. Mark axe to death. Now, I want to talk about Jennifer here because Dante, I am very, very curious.
I'm tired of her.
How many how many grown man full strength axe swings to the person behind you do you think that you would sleep through before you wake up?
I wouldn't have slept through any of this because I would have literally felt the door opening in
Yes.
the bedroom. What are you talking about, Jennifer? Nothing, because you're dead.
Right.
And that's when I realized, oh, these movies are about this ridiculous ass clown. And by ridiculous, I don't mean like he's a dumb. I mean like art is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, Art does some really outrageous stuff.
He's at his most ridiculous in this movie.
I agree.
Art, you too silly. He's silly for no reason.
I agree, and I think that David Howard Thornton was really who plays Art the Clown.
It's having
He's
fun.
really he let loose in this movie. He's having the most fun that he's had in this character. He's obviously like really comfortable with this character now because his performance is really what brings Art to life.
Yes. With no dialogue.
With zero dialogue, not just zero dialogue, but no noises, no exclamations, like nothing, like there's nothing but like face work, body work, mannerisms.
It's amazing, actually.
It is. Yeah, no. I mean, David Howard Thornton deserves all the props. But Jennifer stays asleep for much of this attack, much of this grown man wailing on her husband right next to her. But eventually, the force of the axe, the way the bed is moving, it causes her to stir. And she is confused. She doesn't realize what's happening until she starts to turn over. And that's when she lifts up her own arm and she sees that it's completely soaked in blood. So that's when she jumps up and she turns on the light. And when she looks at Mark, at this point, she sees the axe, his neck chopped, and blood is gushing everywhere. It is an extremely bloody, extremely graphic scene. So that's when the camera finally pans up to Santa Claus, and we as the audience see for the first time that Santa is, in fact, surprise, surprise, Art the Clown. At this point, he's very gleefully chopping away at Mark as Jennifer screams, and he finds that hilarious. So after Art chops Mark a few more times, Jennifer is able to run out of the room, closing the bedroom door behind her, and she screams for her children, Juliet and Timmy, to run. That's when Art uses the axe to chop through the bedroom door, and we get a little The Shining, here's Johnny Easter egg moment with Art sticking his face through the door. A little homage. So then Art uses the axe to completely chop the bedroom door down, and Jennifer just has to keep running to find her kids. And that's when she runs into Timmy's room. And we and Jennifer see the remains of Timmy, and it's insane. It's very bold, I would say, because again, Timmy is only about 10 years old, and Timmy couldn't be any deader. Timmy could not be murdered any harder than he is right here. I don't know if there are a lot of children in films that have been murdered this hard. Timmy is in pieces. His head is severed. His arm and foot are severed and they're on the floor. His intestines are hanging out. I mean, it's really brutal. That's when Jennifer, she doesn't see Juliet and she ends up running down the stairs screaming for help, but Art is hot on her heels. She tries to run out the front door, but she can't get it open before Art axes her in the back, then throws her against an adjacent wall and axes her again in the stomach. And there is blood pouring everywhere. And Art is super gleeful the whole time, really having a blast, laughing while, of course, not making a single sound. And Jennifer stumbles into the living room. She drops to her knees, and Art comes up behind her and he starts hacking her arm off, silently laughing as she screams in agony, until finally he slams the axe down on her head and Jennifer falls to the floor dead. And we get a final shot of her body, and she is in pieces on the living room floor. She's very, very, very dead. And that is the second on screen kill. So that's when we cut to Art, who has taken a seat at the kitchen counter, and his hands are still soaked in blood. And he starts eating the cookies and milk that Jennifer put out for Santa's elf. He has his feet kicked up, and he is really enjoying the snack. And this scene is a quintessential, I would say, example of David Howard Thornton really bringing this character to life, like really making this character fun, because his mannerism, the way he does that like shoulder shimmy while he's munching on these cookies.
It's not just the shoulder shimmy. It's the fact that Art is breaking the cookies and dipping them in milk.
That yes.
It's the fact that after he eats the cookies and milk, he washes the plates.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Cause it doesn't fit, because he very politely washes the dish and then puts it in the rack to dry with this family's
These
blood
people are
all over your
dead.
hands. Yes. Yes. There's a body on the living room floor.
Who are you cleaning for?
He's cleaning for himself. He might be a murderer, but he's not a slob. But once he's done washing this dish, he's about to leave when he hears a noise from a kitchen cabinet. When he opens it, he ends up finding Juliet hiding. He waves to her with a bloody hand, and we just get a final shot of his blood soaked X on the kitchen counter before the screen cuts to black, and then we get the title screen, Terrifier 3. And that was the cold opening. What did you think of that?
So there's a lot of talk about it being like a very bloody opening. I think it lived up to the hype.
I think so.
I think there was a lot of conversation about it being really shocking, and I think the little boy's death was shocking.
Mhm.
It was definitely peak Art the Clown.
Mhm.
I definitely think Juliet was hacked to pieces.
I was wondering that, yeah. I mean, I definitely don't think that he would have any reason to keep her alive.
Right, I think he totally killed her. But it was a good co-opening.
So this is my thing. I thought so too. I thought it was a well done cold opening, despite its flaws, the family being kind of dumb. But I do have to say, and I know that people might disagree with this, um I don't see why it was there. Because again, this movie has a runtime of over 2 hours. And I Damien Leone put this scene in there because he could, because he is not beholden to any production companies because he funds his movies himself. So he put this in there, and he wanted it to be shocking. He wanted it to be really gory, and he did that, but ultimately the opening doesn't fit in the timeline, nor does it have any bearing on the story. These characters connect in no way to anyone else in the whole story. This location connects to no other location in the whole story. And I get it, art kills people. It's its like whole thing. But throughout the rest of the story, you'll see everything is kind of like connected in a way. At least it makes sense, the moves that he's making. This coming out here to like kill this family in this like suburban neighborhood randomly doesn't, in this Santa costume, it doesn't quite make sense to me. It just kind of feels like something that was shoehorned in there because it would be shocking, because it would be like a good cold opening, and it made the runtime a little longer. And I don't think that the runtime needs to be that long. I think that if Damien Leone wanted to cut things, I mean, he could edit the movie better. He could be better at post production, and we saw that with Terrifier 2. Terrifier 2 suffered a lot from poor post production. It should have been edited down more. And in our opinion, that's how we feel about it.
Which was shocking because Terrifier 1 was edited so well.
I agree, and people shit on Terrifier 1 a lot. People have a lot of gripes about it. I thought Terrifier 1 was great. It's one of the first movies that we did for this podcast. I think it was really
Great.
creative. I think that Damien Leone did a really good job. Yeah, with like fucking a bubblegum budget. I think that he did a really, really good job, and I think that he packed a lot into that hour and 25 minutes, and I think that, however you feel about it, you don't like it, that's fine. He's in one location, that's fine. We all know that he was poor when he was making it, so I give him a pass on all those things. It's very understandable. I think that Terrifier 2 was like very, it was like really ambitious, and I think that it was too long, and I think a lot of people had that complaint that it was too long. And it's not even that it was just like too long, because this movie is not much shorter, but it's that movie, it dragged a lot.
There was scenes where you were just like, why is Sienna at this high school right now?
Yes.
Why are we at Jonathan School?
Why are we here? It doesn't add anything to the story, and it's like, I think that this scene is good. I think that It's fine. I thought it was a good cold opening, but ultimately, when you're fighting to make a movie a reasonable runtime, which Damien Leone was trying to do with this movie, I think that it's scenes like this that it doesn't fit. It's there just to be there. And I know that
Yeah.
people probably had fun watching it. People had a good time. They like to see art kill people. There are people out there that like to see art kill children, and that if that's your prerogative, that's cool. But if I'm being like a critic of the movie, it didn't fit anywhere. Like it was just kind of, yeah, okay. Thank you for giving me that opening. It would have been a great short film, another Art the Clown short film. It would have been exceptional. But yeah, I just kind of felt like, okay.
Like if they just dropped this like a 10-minute short film as a bonus feature,
Yes.
that would have been dope as hell.
It would have been super, super, super cool. I mean, that would have been really cool when they were just like announcing that the movie was going to come out. It could have been hyped up really high. It could have been like sneak peek kind of thing, little short film kind of thing. They could have done a lot with that, but it's like it's tacked on to the beginning of this movie. And it's like once you watch the whole movie and you get all the way through to the end, it's like you kind of find yourself wondering, why did he do that? Like, who were those people? Why did he go there? Why did he pick that house? It's just, I don't know.
No, you do know because what you said was right. Shit was random as fuck. Shit was random as hell. And this movie is too long, and you can't be random as hell and then spend the rest of the movie trying to connect all this stuff.
Yes,
King, you gotta pick.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you for having my back.
That's why I'm here.
So, well, let's get back to it. So, then we proceed to get some on-screen text. It reads 5 years prior. So now this 5 years prior, that what they're referring to is the end of the second movie. So for anyone that doesn't remember, so Art ends up taking final girl Sienna Shaw's little brother Jonathan to the abandoned Terrifier ride on Halloween night 5 years ago. And after Art and Sienna have this big final battle, Sienna ends up decapitating Art before the little pale girl comes and collects his head. Then there's a post-credit scene where Art's victim from Terrifier 1, Vicky, it's so random, but she ends up giving birth to Art's head in the psychiatric facility where she is being incarcerated after attacking a news anchor. Essentially, we're just getting back to that particular night, the night that all that happened, Halloween night. What we're seeing is a police officer has entered the abandoned Terrifier ride, and he finds Art's decapitated corpse still lying on the ground where Sienna left it. He inspects the body and he calls for backup, but that's when he hears a noise. He goes to investigate. He's concentrating on whatever he's looking at, but that's when he peeks over his shoulder, he looks back and sees that Art's body is gone. It's not laying there anymore. Before he even has time to react, that's when Art's headless body appears behind him, lifts him up off his feet, and begins choking the shit out of him. The officer tries shooting Art's body. He shoots him a few times, but it's no use. It's a headless corpse attacking you. That probably wasn't going to work. But it was a valiant effort. Now, we don't actually see the officer die in this moment, but I am going to count this as the third on-screen kill because he is choking the shit out of him. He has him by the neck. He's caught him. And then the next time we see Art's body again, he's getting on a subway train and he is just like kind of haphazardly placed this officer's severed head onto his body. And he's just kind of like holding it there, this like obviously dead head. So then we cut to the psychiatric facility where Vicky is being held, and the orderly Burke. So we met him at the end of Terrifier 2. It's picking up right where that one ended in the post credit scene. he hears this scream. So we know that that scream is coming from the nurse on duty who was going to check on Vicky, and she found her in her cell having just given birth to Art the Clown's severed head. And it was equally as disgusting and shocking as it sounds now with me explaining it to you. It was really crazy, but it did happen.
This is the introduction of my least favorite character in the whole movie.
Vicky,
Everything about Vicky is so annoying.
Dante, this is Dante,
Everything
this is why
about
we've
Vicky.
been friends for damn near 2
Almost
decades.
20 years at this point.
I hate Vicky. I fucking hate this bitch.
What about when they fake you out and you think she's over and then she comes back in the movie? You're like, God damn it,
Dante.
this bitch.
And we're gonna get there. We're gonna get to the ending. But that shit really pissed me off because she doesn't just come back. She comes back as like fucking lead actress. And it drove me fucking nuts. I was like, what is happening
Who
right
gave her
now?
all these lines?
I don't like Dante lines. She was acting, and it was pissing me off. And Dante.
I was like, oh my God, you back?
I know a lot of people might disagree with that, but Dante, like we said, these are not really like plot-driven movies. I would say this one has the strongest plot of all 3 movies. It's the most succinct, like well put together plot. But it doesn't. It's not. These are not like plot-driven movies. Like we're not coming for the cinema of it all. We're coming for Art the Clown. Bitch, if you don't get out of the way and let me see Art the Clown work, we're only here to see this motherfucker, and now I have to watch this bitch. I was heated. I was like, this is going on for a very long time.
She was doing some really weird stuff.
Dante.
There's gore, and then there's like
what the hell she was doing?
Smut.
Dante, yes. Yes. Dante.
And I was like,
girl, what is you doing?
Oh, baby.
Oh no, baby, what is you doing?
I was like, oh no, baby, what you doing? I was like, I'm not feeling this. And I don't know if somebody told him she needed more to do and more lore, but she is somebody who really wore out her welcome, in my opinion. Why was she in this movie?
I could not agree more.
Where the little pale girl?
Tate, but wait, so initially I was like, thank God no more little pale girl. But by the end I was like, where is
the little pale girl was gone? Where my girl at? Yo, where my girl
I was like, where my girl at? The one that like shits on the floor. I would rather watch that than this fucking shit.
And don't talk.
And does not talk. Why are we, Dante, when did this become a fucking soap opera all of a sudden? This bitch is talking her ass off, giving fucking Shakespearean monologues and shit.
And she's mad.
I was like, please get off my screen. Immediately. I was having a rough time.
Oh my God.
I was having a rough time because I don't like her, and they double down on it in the end. They're like, no, this is a Vicky movie. But yes. Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't want to get too bogged down. I don't want y'all to think that we're just like shitting on the movie. We're excited because this is our first time talking to each other about it. Yeah. So these are our genuine feelings, like meeting for the first time.
Because I saw it a sneak preview. So think about like I saw it then in October, and she saw it when it came to streaming for the podcast.
Yeah.
So it's like I've been waiting to talk to her about it, but I was like, no, I can't tell it. And I was like, I'm not gonna share anything. I was like, I'm not gonna spoil it. And she's like, I'm not gonna see it until we record. And I was like, I'm still not gonna spoil it so we can talk about it and they can get our real reactions. Horror movies is one of our things we love to talk about with each other. So we're like really ready to talk about this one.
Yes. And it's funny because I would say that like times like this, like what you guys are experiencing right now, I would say this is the closest to our just like raw conversations that you're going to get. Because with stuff like Scream, we've talked about that movie so many times.
So many times.
There's so many times. There's no surprises left for us. So when we're recording it, we're coming to like do a job. Like we're coming to record an episode to put out for people to listen to. Like we already know everything that we're about to say
Same.
right now. So like, not that we don't love that movie, but like, it's a little bit of like the thrill is gone. We're pretty much set on how we feel about that movie. With this, we've never talked about it before, so we're probably gonna get excited when we share views, and
Mhm.
so just bear with us. Hopefully, you appreciate that.
Yeah, because it's a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff.
But I'm happy you also felt. I was like, oh my god, there's a lot of Vicky in this movie.
Dante, by the end, I was weary. Okay, I was fucking weary. But okay,
Oh my
so
god. Okay.
let's keep
Okay.
going. Okay. So now Burke heads down to Vicky's room to find out what happened to the nurse. What is she screaming about? And when he gets there, there's some freaky shit happening. Dante, I don't know how else to describe this, but some real freaky ass shit happening right now. It is a real, like, what the fuck am I looking at moment.
Like a night professor, and Papa Club was like, "This is some freaking shit."
That's exactly what it's like. What the hell is happening right now? My mind can't even comprehend what I'm looking at. So let me like lay it out for y'all. Cause I'm like, Damien Leone is wilded with this movie, but let me lay it out. Let me lay it out. All right, y'all. I'm gonna do my best. What Burke is seeing in Vicky's room. So now the nurse is dead. Spoiler. She's on the ground. Art's severed head is eating her face, because if there is one thing that Art loves, a delicacy to Art, it's a lady's face. So he is munching the face down to like the fucking bone. He's eating this face, okay? That in itself would be shocking, but I would say what is the most outrageous thing that is happening is that Art's head still has like the esophagus attached to it. So if you can imagine, it's just this head with this really long, like 5 foot tubular esophagus just running from it. So as he's eating, Dante, Vicky is holding the other end of this long ass esophagus. I feel like sick. She's holding it up to her mouth. As he's eating, she's essentially sucking out the chewed up face meat of this nurse from his esophagus. So, just to give you a visual, we as the audience are watching this nurse's chewed up face travel down this esophagus. They give us a close up. And instead of ending like where it would end, like in Art's stomach, which is like missing right now, it's traveling straight into Vicky's mouth. And she's like gobbling it up. Dante, I don't ever want to have to say some shit like that again in my whole life.
It was a lot going on, and I was like, "Are they like becoming one? Is this what it's supposed to show us? Like she's the real vessel of the evil spirit?"
Well, yeah.
Why are we watching this?
I don't know, but you are on to something in that regard, because that is going to come up as we go on later, because like we said, we get a lot of fucking Vicky time. But yeah, I mean, essentially, I don't know necessarily what this is supposed to be representing by now, but I do think that there is something in the story that would explain that. I think that she is like the vessel for a demon. I don't want to spoil it for you guys just yet because we'll get there, but Vicky is obviously not normal anymore. I mean, she's sucking on a piece of esophagus. So,
She's definitely not a living being anymore.
no, like at this point she is not the normal Vicky that got her face eaten off. She's not a victim anymore. She's definitely something else at this point. It's fucking disgusting.
That could have easily been the cold opening.
Dante, that would have made a brilliant cold opening, because remember, Terrifier 2 opens at the ending of Terrifier 1. And I thought the cold opening for Terrifier 2 was great. I thought they did a really good job with that. Him in the morgue after waking up from shooting himself in Terrifier 1, he wakes up in the morgue, kills the coroner, gets his bag, puts his stuff in it, and he's like walking down that alley in like slow-mo. I thought that was a really, really, really good cold opening.
Right.
This would have made a good cold opening, and I think it would have been equally as shocking, if not more shocking.
This is gross. It's just like a lie.
That's an understatement. But okay, so let's keep going.
All
Okay.
right.
So when Vicky notices Burke standing there, which for anybody that doesn't know, this is a little cameo. Burke is Chris Jericho. He's a wrestler. He's there. So she starts mocking him. At first, she's playing a victim, and then she starts maniacally laughing, taunting Burke by saying, help me, over and over and over again. Burke is understandably like, this shit is way above my pay grade. So he's like starting to exit the room. So he's backing out, but when he looks over down the hallway is Art's headless body standing there waving to him. Terrifying. He is so distracted by the body standing there that he doesn't notice Vicky get up, and she lunges at him and she starts choking him. So he starts cold cocking her. I mean, giving her the business. But it's no use because, like we said, Vicky is not a normal person at this point. So she's eating these punches. Like, it's really not phasing her at all. If anything, she kind of likes it.
Yes. Oh yeah.
No, yeah, it's a choice. There's a lot happening here, but yeah, no, she's feeling it. And so that's when she ends up putting her hand in his mouth. She kind of grabs him by the jaw and she just starts jacking the shit out of it, pulling it off. Art's body has also made its way over to Burke, and it starts pulling pieces of Burke's head off as well. And they essentially pull Burke's head to pieces at this point, and that's how they kill him. And that's the fourth on-screen kill.
Ugh.
Yeah, it was a lot. So now we cut to Art, who has taped his head onto his body, and a newly freed Vicky. So they are on the subway, just as pleased as can be. At one stop, a guy who's actually wearing an Art the Clown costume or a Miles County Clown costume, complete with all the fixins. So he has the bag, he has the horn, he has the little hat. He gets on and he notices them. And instead of minding his own fucking business, he calls out to them, telling them how good their costumes are, with all the blood that's on them. He's like, they look very authentic. They're great. Because remember, all of this is happening on Halloween night. So he's just assuming that these are people in costumes. So the guy is really into Art and Vicky, and he asks them to take a picture, which they do. They do smile for the picture. But then they smile to each other, which is bad news for this guy who probably should have just minded his own business. Now, we don't see him die, but we know for sure that he does because when we see Art and Vicky again, they are back at Art's lair, which is located in this really large abandoned house. What is it? Apartment building? I don't know, mansion?
I think it's a abandoned house, a large house.
Yeah, like a mansion-sized house. Like it's big. So they're in this mansion house, and Art is in a fresh new costume, complete with the little hat and bag and things that he stole from the guy.
It's so crisp.
Dante, he you know how they say he got that shit on?
All I could think was, damn, that bitch is clean.
The shit is practically starched. He's looking good. But he has on this fresh costume that he clearly got from that guy. So that guy is somewhere, probably dead and naked. And Vicky is obnoxiously playing with the horn that they stole from the guy. But Vicky stops when she notices a gaggle of like rats on the ground. And she goes over, she sits with them, and she's playing with them. And that's when they decide to go their separate ways in the house. Art goes to sit in a chair in the attic in front of this big window. And Vicky heads to a bathroom to look at herself in the mirror. She's talking to herself in the mirror about how she used to be hot and how now nobody is going to have sex with her because Vicky's face is fucked up. For anybody that doesn't remember, or if you guys haven't heard that episode, or if this is the first one you're jumping into, Vicky was Art's last victim in Terrifier 1. She showed up to save her sister, not knowing that her sister was already dead, but Vicky's face ends up getting eaten by Art. He pulls off literally every piece of meat that he can. He pulls out an eyeball, and she doesn't die. It takes her about a year to recover, and she looks insane. She looks really gross. And I do not mean to be disparaging to anyone with any kind of like disabilities, any kind of like facial things. I know that people get attacked and things happen, but Vicky looks horrible. And we made fun of her a lot in Terrifier too. We called her potato face. That's kind of like what it is. It's like a bumpy potato with an eyeball. And that's Vicky. And so because her face looks like this, I guess she is kind of feeling like, I don't know, a little lonely right now. But she starts yelling at herself in the mirror before she slams her head into the mirror, shattering it. That's when she picks up a giant shard of glass and she climbs into this very nasty, disgusting bathtub. In the tub, she ends up deeply cutting her arm. So she's slicing her wrist. But like I thought about The Craft when she's like, "You did it the right way." That's what Vicky is doing. She's slitting her wrists, but she's going vertically. So it's a very long, deep slit, which will kill her, which I think is kind of important. So then she sits in this bathtub and she just kind of waits to bleed out while Art is sitting in his rocking chair in the attic in front of this window. That's when the screen fades to black and we get on screen text that reads present day. In the present day, Sienna is being picked up by her Uncle Greg from a psychiatric facility where she has been a patient. When they arrive at Uncle Greg's house, Sienna is eagerly greeted by her younger cousin, Greg's daughter, Gabby. She is also greeted by her aunt, Jessica. And Sienna will be staying with them because her mom died horrifically in the last movie. So this is kind of Sienna's only family right now. So Gabby takes Sienna to the room where she'll be staying, and the two have a little heart to heart. And then Gabby starts reading from Sienna's diary, which details Sienna's fight with Art before Sienna stops her. She does not want her to do that. So then we cut back to this mansion where Art's lair is with Vicky. Now, some workers have arrived and they've entered this abandoned house. One of the workers, his name is Dennis, he ends up finding Art, who is still sitting in the exact same spot in the rocking chair that he was in 5 years earlier. And it's giving very much kind of Black Christmas vibes. I think that that's what Damien Leone was going for here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just doing like a little homage, a little Easter egg. So, for anybody that doesn't remember, in Black Christmas, one of the girls is killed. She's killed with the bag over her head. And Billy, the killer, ends up placing her in a chair in the attic, and he just kind of leaves her there. She stays there sitting in a chair in front of this window in the attic we assume forever, because nobody ever searches this fucking house. And they cut to her, I would say 76 times in the movie, so that you do not forget that she's there. But that's what it feels like, Art sitting here. So now simultaneously, the other worker, Jackson, he ends up finding Vicky. So she is also in the exact same spot that she was in that nasty ass, funky ass bathtub she's been in for like 5 years. So besides being covered in cobwebs, Art looks great. Still crisp, clean suit,
Pristine.
pristine suit. And he's just sitting there, just kind of sitting bolt upright, which is this huge smile on his face. Vicky, on the other hand, looks horrible. I cannot express how disgusting Vicky looks. She's in this bathtub, and in the bathtub, it's like full of sludge.
Yes.
There's a lot of fucking sludge is in here. I don't know how else to describe it. It's just a bunch of nasty ass shit is in this fucking tub. And Vicky, it's like she's seemingly dead, and it looks like she is also covered in sludge. But the two men decide to approach Art and Vicky, and this is a situation that I would never, ever find myself in. Dante, this could never be me.
No, I would have left.
Yeah. As soon as I saw Art sitting there, so the guy Dennis that's with Art, he is having a hard time figuring out if Art is alive or not. And then the guy Jackson who's found Vicky, I don't know if he thinks he can like render aid or something. So he takes out his phone in order to record this sludgy mess that is Vicky. And so then at the same moment, Art comes back to life, and he grabs Dennis by the face and he throws him across the room. At the same time, Vicky comes back and she takes that shard of glass that she used to slice her arm and that she's been holding in the same hand for 5 years. It's covered in disgusting, nasty, filthy, God knows what sludge. And she takes it and she rams it into Jackson's neck. And I know that we should be like, oh my God, she just stabbed this guy in the neck. That's really horrific. But my whole thing was like, ew, he got that sludge in his body now. And I think that that's really disgusting. It's horrible.
It's so gross.
That's an understatement. This shit is fucking foul. So Jackson has been disposed of. So now Dennis is really being thrown around. I mean, like every which way but loose by Art. Before Art finally grabs him, and he uses this spike to stab him in the hand and kind of pin Dennis to the floor. Dennis is fighting, but Art ends up biting off some of his fingers. And the whole time, Dennis is just screaming bloody murder. Art then takes a box cutter and he cuts down the middle of Dennis's head before grabbing onto the flaps of skin on either side and completely pulling all of Dennis's head skin down. Like imagine like peeling a banana. That's what it looks like.
Yes.
And those are the 5th and 6th on-screen kills.
Very Cenobite looking.
It's horrible. Disgusting.
But, I mean, that's not even the most disgusting part of this scene, though.
It's not. So, it's not at all. So, let's keep going. Now, while Art was doing that, Vicky has been watching him. And I guess you can say she's become aroused by watching this. And she ends up taking that very large, sludge covered, disgusting shard of glass that she's been holding for 5 years, and she uses it to masturbate. And there is blood spilling all out of her between her legs. Art finds the whole thing amusing. Once Vicky finishes, he looks at her and he kind of gives her like a tisk tisk, but like a wry smile. So it's just like a lot happening. It's like a lot of very unfortunate things happening in one scene.
Was it like a reference to The Exorcist, or just like being nasty?
It very, very, very well could have been a Exorcist reference.
Okay, so now now she's not Vicky anymore. She's a full demon.
Okay, so yeah, so this is what, and we're gonna get to like flush this out a little bit more as we go on. I guess we can skip ahead a little bit just to like kind of cover that. So there ends up being a conversation between Sienna and her little brother Jonathan. Sienna brings up that at a time when she was in the hospital, because Sienna has been kind of in the psychiatric hospital almost like this entire 5 years. Jonathan used to write to her every day, and he used to give her information, things that he was discovering because he wanted to know more about Art the Clown. What is he? How do you get rid of him? So he wrote to her, and one of his notes mentioned that, quote, demons want to enter our world, but they can't do that alone. They need someone to die first, and that person has to be sinister, depraved, the worst kind of evil, i.e., Art the Clown. And David Howard Thornton did an interview where someone was asking him, like more specifics about his character because, surprise, surprise, we kind of find this out in Terrifier 2. Art the Clown is not just a man, he is a demon. David Howard Thornton explained that a little bit better by saying in Terrifier 1, Art the Clown was just a man. He was just a crazy clown. And then he says that it isn't until he shoots himself in the mouth, which he does at the end of Terrifier 1, and technically, dies, that he is then inhabited by a demon and brought back. And that's what we see happen in the morgue. End of Terrifier 1 and beginning of Terrifier 2, it's like happened now. So he is like a demon. I brought up the thing about Vicky slitting her wrists because I'm wondering if that is the thing that made her into a vessel. Like Art shoots himself at the end of Terrifier 1. Technically he dies, but really it just leaves his body open to become a vessel for a demon. So now when Vicky slits her wrists, technically she dies, but this is just a means of opening her up as a vessel so now she can become a demon. Does that make sense?
Now that she's dead, now she's kind of like Art.
Yes. That what happened to Art when he died at the beginning of Terrifier, and then the demon, entered his body, because this is all by the lore that Damien Leone is creating. He puts the demons want to enter our worlds, want to, like, he puts that in there. So, and then, David Howard Thornton says in the interview, it isn't until he shot himself in the mouth and dies that he then becomes a demon. So I'm wondering if that's why Vicky slit her wrist. If she was looking in the mirror, she was looking at how disgusting she is. She was like, "You used to be hot, but nobody's ever gonna want to fuck you now." If she reached her rock bottom, which is like what they try to do Sienna in this movie, if she reached that and felt like, well, now I'm just gonna like give myself over to be inhabited by a demon, is that what that means? Is that why she slit her wrist and just laid there? And why she technically died but is still around in the story, just like Art.
Yes, I see what you're saying. That makes sense. Like that was her death.
Exactly, like that was her death that opened her up to be possessed by a demon.
Right. And then also at the end of the movie, when she's talking to Sienna, she does say like, "I'm gonna ruin you just like I did this one." You remember?
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And so we'll get there because I think that you get a lot more information at the end about Vicky. But yes. So I definitely think that from here on out, Vicky is 100% a demon. But let's keep going. So she does the masturbating thing. And so now, meanwhile, at Sienna's family's house, they're sitting for a meal and they're having some very wholesome conversation when all of a sudden Sienna starts having a hallucination. It is of her friend Brooke's bloodied and brutalized corpse, and it's sitting at the dinner table with them. Now, in case you don't remember, Brooke was Sienna's friend. She drove with her to go to the Terrifier ride in Terrifier 2. Sienna brought her along after Art had taken Jonathan, and that led Brooke to Art. And of course, Brooke is like brutally murdered by him. This hallucination is not letting Sienna forget that. So she's telling Sienna that she is dead because of her, because of Sienna and Jonathan leading her to Art the Clown. She's saying basically that Sienna killed her, Brooke, and Sienna's mother, because Sienna's mother gets killed as well. Brooke also tells Sienna that no amount of medicine is going to stop these hallucinations, and she then continues yelling at Sienna just kind of over and over and over again until Sienna has to excuse herself from the table and leave because she is about to have a meltdown. So that's when we cut to Jonathan. So this is Sienna's little brother who is now attending college and seemingly living a pretty normal life. So he's just arrived back to his dorm room to find his roommate Cole and Cole's girlfriend Mia there. So apparently Mia is obsessed with Art the Clown. And by extension, she's obsessed with Jonathan for having been a victim of Art the Clown's. So she comes over to Jonathan and she's just kind of like fangirling. I mean, that's really the only way that I know how to describe it over him. It's all very, very bizarre. And she finally asked Jonathan to come on to her and her friend's podcast because they have a true crime podcast. And they have found that all the Art the Clown, like Miles County Murder episodes, are by far their most popular. And Jonathan is, of course, like, I don't like do stuff like that, which is totally understandable. And that's when his roommate Cole steps in, and he's asking Mia if she really thinks that Jonathan wants to dredge up the worst experience of his life. He's trying to move on, but Mia is insistent. So Jonathan just has to say that he'll think about it before leaving the room to answer a call from Sienna. And I was like, God, podcasters are just fucking audacious.
Yeah. And Jonathan's so meek.
He is so meek. And that's why it's like I kind of appreciate his roommate Cole, but I feel like Cole doesn't check Mia nearly as much as he should.
No, he doesn't. But he tries to be a good roommate. Very Hallie for Scream 2.
He does. You're right. I will give him credit for that. He does try. And Mia's his girlfriend, so it's like a weird, walk the line type
Thing.
situation. Yeah. But Jonathan steps away to take this call from Sienna, and Sienna is really going through it. As they are talking, we get some flashback shots of Sienna having a breakdown post the Brooke hallucination incident. She's taking some medication, but she is just calling to tell Jonathan that she misses him, and they're both really excited to be spending this Christmas together because Sienna has been in a psychiatric hospital for years at this point. Once they are off the phone, Sienna tells Gabby that she needs to be creative to get her mind off of things. So she does Gabby's makeup. Gabby is really fixated on Sienna's scars, the ones that she got with Art the Clown. But Gabby doesn't really know how Sienna got these scars. So Gabby is pretty young. I would say maybe like 9 or 10.
I thought she was like 12.
Okay, so online, because I'm really wondering, but it says that it's estimated that Gabby is somewhere between 12 and 14, 15.
I would say 12. I can imagine her being 14. And that damn dumb.
Yeah. I could not imagine her being 15.
I'm not really a fan of her either.
Dante. I don't like Gabby. I mean, that shouldn't be too surprising. It's really hard for me to tolerate children in movies, and Gabby is one of those children that I can't tolerate. I don't like her. No offense.
She's precocious, but also very annoying.
Yeah, it's not a fun.
I don't understand why they thought we needed to add a new character when, like, we had Jonathan right there.
I agree. Jonathan isn't in the picture
A lot.
as much as you would think that he would be.
Right.
Okay, well let's keep going because Gabby is gonna she's in this bitch a lot too, and that's really unfortunate to me. But
He added some really obnoxious characters.
I agree. I don't like that.
Her whole story arc is so annoying. I would have liked more of Jonathan and his roommate.
I agree. Just more of Jonathan. Like Jonathan's not like my favorite character, just because I feel like in 2, we talked about this when we were going over that movie. He didn't do as much as I would have wanted him to in Terrifier 2. I think that I think
Right.
that his character was underdeveloped in 2. I like him a little bit more in Terrifier 3, but you don't get a lot of him in Terrifier 3. But you get a lot of fucking Vicky, and you get a lot of fucking this kid.
And I don't know why. And then it's like, why do we have to give a shit about this kid when you hacked up that other one earlier in the film? It's not like we care about children at this point. You made Timmy Tartar.
Straight up.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, me too. Maybe he was doing that in the beginning to show that nobody's off limits, so like Gabby can get it. Maybe he thought that it would make us like be more afraid for Gabby's life.
No. Begging for Gabby's demise.
Dante! It's so funny. There's a few people in this movie that I cannot wait to die.
But I'm really not a fan.
I understand
She wasn't a fan of that
completely.
choice.
I understand completely. So you have to remember, so Gabby is like pretty young. Sienna has been gone for like 5 years. So Gabby has like no real concept of what happened to Sienna. They're really sheltering her from that information. So when Gabby asks for details about how Sienna got her scars, Sienna just keeps it very brief and very vague by saying she got into a fight, but she did win. So let's be clear on that. So meanwhile, we're checking back in with Art and Vicky at the Lair house, and Art is tinkering with some new weapons, some new killing tools. So he gets this canister of liquid nitrogen and he's rigged it. So he tests it on a rat, and when he sprays the rat, it gets this continuous stream of liquid nitrogen that ultimately freezes the rat completely. Once the rat is frozen, he picks it up and he smashes it to bloody pieces on the table. He's very, very, very excited about this liquid nitrogen weapon. So then we cut to a bar where a man dressed as Santa is drinking, partying. There's 2 women on his lap. There's another bar patron, Smokey, who is AKA horror movie vet Clint Howard.
Working.
And I love to see it. I love to see horror vets working. He is also there. There's also a bartender, and they're all talking and having fun when Art walks by with his big ass bag and he spots Santa through the window and he gets dumb excited. He is giddy. He can't wait to meet Santa. It's like Santa is a celebrity. So he rushes into the bar, he pushes these 2 girls out of the way, and he makes his way to Santa. So once he is at Santa, he shows everyone his little car horn. He starts blowing it like crazy, which Santa laughs about because overall he's a pretty jovial guy. But the bartender's like, enough. And Art clocks that. He didn't like it at fucking all. But in this moment, nothing can dampen his spirit around Santa. So he quickly bounces back. And so now Art is sitting on Santa's lap, and Santa proposes that they all have a drink. And after the bartender gives Art a bit of a hard time about his ID, they all get drinks. Art ends up taking his whole shot, so he puts the whole thing in his mouth, and then immediately turns and cartoon style spits this entire shot into Santa's face. Now, Santa's been pretty nice up until this point, but that was a lot. Art's doing a lot. Now, Smokey thinks it's hilarious, but Santa and the bartender are pretty pissed because that was rude, which is fair. So Santa's like, get the hell off my lap. And that's when Art stops and he just slowly turns his head towards Santa with this huge, mischievous grin on his face. And that's when they all realize that Art is taking a gigantic piss on Santa's leg. He's sitting on Santa's lap, just peeing. Art thinks that this might be his funniest antic in a long time. He is dying. But Santa is at this point so pissed that he's like, I'm gonna kill this bitch because that was crazy. And it's fair. So the bartender ends up having to step in and he ends up pushing Art to the ground, which obviously pisses Art off even more. So they throw Art his bag, tell him to get the hell out. Art has other plans though. So he starts fumbling around in his big trash bag. When the bartender starts approaching him again, Art just whips out a gun and shoots the bartender in the neck. Then he shoots Smokey right in the head, and that's the 7th and 8th on-screen kills. Now, at this point, the sometimes silly Art is as serious as a heart attack. Like, this is like his if looks could kill, he'd be dead as Oren face. It's very imposing.
Ah,
A good old Kill Bill reference. so, so now at this point, he's walking over towards Santa, gun out, and Santa is trying to beg and plead with Art. So he starts giving Art his suit, and this makes Art smile because he wants the suit. So Art then ties Santa up to a chair and he dons Santa's whole outfit, complete with the hat. Art then pulls out his brand new liquid nitrogen canister, and Santa, aka Charles, is trying to plead with Art for his life. He's telling him about how he has a family, how he has kids and grandkids, but Art could not care less at all. He ends up spraying Santa's arms and legs with the liquid nitrogen, freezing them. Then Art takes a hammer and he starts hammering at Charles' frozen limbs, breaking off chunks of flesh in the process. Then Art comes back with his liquid nitrogen canister and he sprays the screaming Charles in the face, totally freezing it. That's when Art takes his hammer and he starts hammering away at Charles' face, who is very much still conscious at this point while Art is breaking pieces off. So finally, Art rips Charles's beard off, and you can hear muffled screams coming from what's left of Charles' face. And you can see his last remaining eye looking around frantically. Now, we don't see him die, but he definitely does die. So I'm counting it as the 9th on screen kill. There was like not a lot left of him. So now, back at Sienna's family's house, Sienna and her aunt are having a heart to heart about her mother because Sienna's aunt Jenny was
a sister.
yeah, so Sienna's aunt Jenny was Sienna's mother's sister. Aunt Jenny is also really missing her sister, just like Sienna is, because remember the mom died in Terrifier 2. She got potato faced.
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a pretty brutal scene. She died horrifically, closed casket for sure. But her mom being gone is really weighing on Sienna, and I'm sure she feels a lot of guilt as well. But later that night, when Sienna's aunt and uncle are in bed, Her aunt Jessica is informing her uncle Greg that Sienna is taking Gabby Christmas shopping the next day, totally alone, in order to get a present for Jonathan. Now, this makes Greg extremely nervous because he can kind of sense that Sienna is kind of cracking. And that's a lot based on how she reacted when they were sitting down for that meal and she starts hallucinating Brooke being there. He just thinks that maybe they should have their guard up with Sienna, that maybe it wasn't time for her to come out of the hospital. He just has a lot of feelings on the subject, but the Aunt Jessica, she trusts Sienna and she just wants to give her a chance. So she does. So the Sienna does end up taking Gabby to the mall, and they're there trying to pick out a present for Jonathan when over the loudspeaker she starts to hear the Clown Cafe song along with a lot of screaming. She looks around the store, but nobody else is reacting, so she's not really sure if this is really happening or not. That's when she looks out the store window and she sees a man in a Santa costume and a plastic Santa mask on, toting a huge red sack. She notices there's some blood on his sleeves, and Sienna instinctively knows that this is Art the Clown.
She can just feel it.
Yes. And she's very overwhelmed by it. You can see that it's having a profound effect on her. That is just made even more certain to her when this Santa stops right outside the store and waves to her with his bloody gloves. And at this point, Sienna is losing it because she's kind of wondering to herself, like, did that really just happen?
Happen.
Yes. She's not entirely sure because she's having a hard time telling what is reality. A part of me, surprise, surprise, everybody, this is real. It is Art there. He is in the Santa Claus costume. I feel like if I was Sienna, I would trust this hallucination, or what she thinks is hallucination. She's not sure if she can trust it or not. I would trust it because why would you hallucinate him in a Santa costume?
Correct.
Yeah, like you hallucinated Brooke the way that she looked when she died. You're hallucinating the Clown Cafe song because you heard that. So you're just like recalling things that have already happened. There would be no reason for you to picture him in a Santa costume. That wouldn't really make sense. If you were hallucinating him, you'd hallucinate him the way that you know him in the regular black and white clown costume. So she ends up calling Jonathan, who is at school, and he's watching that girl Mia's podcast on his phone. Now, her co host is blaming everything on Sienna. So she is saying that she believes that Sienna is the real killer because she had a connection to all the victims that died in that Miles County massacre. And she doesn't believe that Art the Clown was ever even really there. She also says that if Jonathan hadn't testified on Sienna's behalf, she probably would be serving a life sentence in jail. Now,
It doesn't even make sense.
that's the thing, it does not make sense to me because realistically, it's very easily verifiable where Sienna was when.
When the mom died.
Yes. Like that's very, very verifiable. She was with a lot of people. There were a lot of people there that witnessed it. And Sienna was mad fucked up at the end of the first movie. Like Sienna got pretty beaten up. I just don't know like who would do that to her if not another person. You know
Person.
what I mean? Yeah, I'm not getting that she just like went on a murder spree. Not to mention they're aware that the Miles County Clown.
It's a real thing.
Yeah. So I just thought that this was really weird. I thought it was a weird thing. And I think, I'm not sure, but I was thinking that maybe Damien Leone put this in here just to show how yappy true crime podcasters are, how they'll just like say anything, whether it be like founded or not. They just like have these opinions. I just felt like it was kind of a bit of a commentary on the true crime podcasting community.
Mm-hmm.
Which, don't get me wrong, I love true crime podcasts. I listen to them, but there are podcasts out there that don't do a good job at presenting information. They do teeter a lot on that like conspiracy theory type, and I don't like that. Some of them can be insensitive. But yes, so the podcast is interrupted by Sienna calling, and they end up meeting up at Jonathan's school because she really wants to talk to him. So Sienna wants Jonathan close because of everything that's going on. But Jonathan at this point is being very standoffish with Sienna. And while they're talking, unfortunately, Cole and Mia show up. And Mia goes into fangirl mode around Sienna like a true psycho. Like, this is a very, very, very bizarre encounter. So Sienna is not feeling it at all. So she's just really kind of sitting there initially, but it's like Mia definitely oversteps her bounds. And this is it's kind of insane. So she wants Sienna to film something for her podcast. She's like, it could be anything. It could be like a getting ready with me video, or like, this is how I'm coping. And Sienna is pissed and she checks Mia, rightfully so. So she ends up calling Mia a leech, and she yells at her to act like a human being for a single second, which is all very, very valid. But Jonathan ends up getting mad at her. And so he's like on some Sienna, what is wrong with you type shit. And I'm like, I don't see the problem here. Realistically, she did what you were too weak to do, is to like check this bitch and tell her to leave me alone. You know what I mean?
That, and also, it's not like he was trying to be friends with them. You know what I'm saying? So it was like this kind of just came like, what point are you trying to really prove? Because it's not like in that first scene you were trying to like be their friend and really make it, like a thing.
Yeah, no. His reaction towards Sienna doesn't make a ton of sense because it's not even like he's really trying to fit in with Mia and Cole, right? It's not like she's ruining his chances of being in this friend group or
Social
something.
group.
Yeah. And this is a little bit of a gripe that I have with this movie. I don't like the way that Jonathan's character is wrote.
Because it's written like two different people.
Yes. Why is that? They don't do a good job of explaining that either.
Like, did you really want to go to that party when you told her that? Or you just wanted to get out of seeing her?
I think he wanted to get out of seeing her. I don't think he ever really intended on going to the party, but I guess my question is, why do you want to get out of seeing her?
Why would you not believe her when she said she saw the clown when literally your entire arc last the movie was you people not believing you when you said you saw the clown?
Yes. Exactly. That is it exactly. Why are we doing this? Like, I guess I'm just like, what is this song and dance that we're doing right now? I don't really appreciate it because I don't feel like this is authentic. And neither does Sienna. Because okay, so let's keep going to like get into this interaction that they're about to have. So he's like mad at her and she's like, "Boy, that when they are alone, Sienna tells Jonathan that she saw art at the mall. She can't really explain it, but she says that she can feel it. She knows it was him. But she says, regardless, they both know that this entire ordeal is not over. But Jonathan isn't buying it because Sienna cut Art's head off. And Sienna snatches his stupid ass and she drags him into this chapel to confront him about like, why is he shutting her out? Does he not believe her? Like, this is all very insane because yes, she cut his head off, but you know for a fact that he like quote unquote died at the end of Terrifier 1. Like, he supposedly died after that encounter that he had with Vicky and Dawn and Tara, but he came back. So what makes you so sure that he couldn't come back? I found this all very weird. I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. It came out of nowhere. That all of a sudden he just like does not believe her, that he's just like doesn't want to be around her. I don't know.
I just thought that I get him trying to move on
Yes.
from it, but that wasn't really what we saw, because in the beginning what we saw was him like sulking and being withdrawn. It wasn't like he was fun and like at a party.
Right. No, yeah, he is not in a happy place. It's like it's a weird thing that's happening. But Jonathan is like, even if Art is still alive, which he doesn't believe he is, he's like, well, why would he come back here? Wouldn't he want to get as far away from Sienna as possible? Which I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall, because this is almost verbatim what Sienna said to Jonathan in Terrifier 2. She said, if Art the clown, the Miles County clown, if he is still alive, he wouldn't come back here. Like, why would he come here? Everybody's looking for him. And at the time, Jonathan was like adamant that he was going to come back. And so I'm like, why is this happening? Like, what is Damien Leone trying to achieve here? Because it doesn't make sense with Jonathan's character, but they don't even flush him out enough to let you know why it doesn't make sense. Like, we literally don't see him actually trying to move on.
No, we don't. And you would think after in the beginning of the second movie, when he was so obsessed with him and then he had that experience, it's like a scene is missing.
Yes. Yeah. It's something is missing from Jonathan's story. So Sienna, she's like telling him to shut the hell up, and she starts berating him, but she ends up catching herself, because at the end of the day, she isn't trying to hurt Jonathan. She tells him that quite the opposite. She really needs him to be on her side. You know, she needs him because he's the only other person that knows what she's going through. But Jonathan tells her that they need to move on because it's over. And that pissed me the hell off, because Sienna reminds Jonathan of a letter he wrote to her telling her that they need to destroy the little pale girl before it's too late because she is a demon. Apparently, Jonathan would write to Sienna every week when she first went into the hospital about all the theories that he had about all this demonology. And in this letter, this is where it comes up, where he writes, you know, that the demon wants to enter our world, but they can't do it alone. They need someone to die first. It has to be somebody really evil. And Jonathan also notes in his letter that when a demon entered the world, a counterpoint must be appointed in order to stop the demon from becoming too powerful. And Jonathan believes that Sienna is that counterpoint. He literally wrote, quote, as long as you're alive, they're vulnerable and they know it. So I'm like very confused. It's like, why would they come back here? Well, that's why, because they want to kill this person. It just doesn't make sense, the 180 that he's done, without some context.
And we don't see why.
Yes. He is writing about the little pale girl because at the end of Terrifier 2, he's in the room with Sienna when the little pale girl comes in and she takes Art's head and disappears with it. And you know that they're demons. So how can you possibly be so sure that this is over? It's like, it just pissed me off because I was like, why are we rewriting this character?
So that he could be out of the way.
I mean, yeah, it has to be.
So we can make room for Gabby.
Yeah, I don't know. It just like, I feel like that he could have gone about this a little differently. Jonathan's character, period. I know that you had a lot of gripes about Jonathan's character in the second movie. I almost wish that he hadn't even been in this one. But Sienna goes on to tell him that she believes that now this demon is using Vicky as a host, because Vicky also disappeared the night that Art's body disappeared. That's the thing. Remember, in the podcast that Jonathan was listening to, they say they never found Art the Clown's body. That's a red flag in itself. Why doesn't Jonathan think that that's strange? That they went down there and didn't find the body and Vicky escaped on the same night. It doesn't make sense. It's poor writing.
There has to be a scene missing, right? Like a deleted scene or something.
I think it has to be. There has to be some explanation for this. It just feels like something's missing. But okay, so Jonathan wants to know what she wants to do, and Sienna wants to go back to the abandoned Terrifier ride in order to find the sword, which is still buried there. So Jonathan heads back to his room, and at this point, he is freaking out, and he is taking his own medicine, but he's like having a panic attack.
But why?
I have to assume that all of this is a lot for him, and I understand that he is probably feeling upset because he is maybe trying to move on, and this is really hard to deal with. He has not dealt with it. I mean, he just like went to college. He didn't go to a psychiatric facility, so I don't think that he's dealing with it the same way that Sienna is. So he's having this freak out in the dorm, and then you see him like he considers texting his aunt Jessica to tell her that Sienna is getting worse. Why? So you just think she's crazy? You just think all of this is because Sienna is losing her mind when you watched supernatural things happen. She killed Art a few times that night.
For you.
For you, she got fucking cat o' nine tails practically to death. She did die. Remember, she died and she came back to save you. If he'd sent that text, I felt like I would have turned the movie off because he was pissing me off. But he doesn't send the text. He just decides to trash his room instead and then just like curl up in the fetal position in his bed. So right now we cut back to Art checking in with him. And as we know, he is at the mall where Sienna is. So he's at this mall and he's getting very comfortable in this Santa Claus costume. So he ends up taking the mall's Santa seat because the real mall Santa is on a break. And there's this long line of kids waiting to see Santa. When one little girl runs up to Art in his Santa costume, he ends up giving her a doll. So once all the kids see this, they all rush up and they're trying to get presents too. And Santa just starts handing out a bunch of shit. But all the adults here are feeling very uneasy because while he is wearing a Santa
It's
costume,
art.
he's wearing the Santa costume, but it's his face is totally out. So his painted face is out. It's clearly not fucking Santa Claus. And the store employees, like, they know for sure that this is not the mall Santa. And then like some of the parents are like, this Santa is scaring my kid. Like, who the fuck is this guy? So security comes up. He tells the kids to skedaddle. They have their presents. They kind of run off, which pisses Art off. And then security, he ends up manhandling Art just kind of out of this Santa chair, and he tells him that he needs to leave. Like, he's like, get the fuck out. Art starts laughing maniacally on the sidelines, and this little all of this is happening while this little boy named Corey starts opening one of the presents that he just got from Santa Art. Well, as he's opening this present, it ends up being a fucking bomb. And it explodes on like a dozen people, like women and children, taking people's faces clean off. We are going to find out later, but I'll just put it here. In this explosion, 5 people are ultimately killed and 6 people are left in critical condition. So this would be, we're going to consider this the 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th on-screen kills. So now we are cutting back to Sienna. So she is arriving at her aunt and uncle's house and it's pretty late. So she presumably, it's her sword. She has it wrapped up in this box like a Christmas present. And she doesn't want to get caught with it. So she tries hiding it under the Christmas tree. But her cousin Gabby catches her and presses her on what it is. And she even notices that Sienna's hands are extremely dirty, which Sienna blames on a nasty fall. But we as the audience know that it's from her like digging up this sword at the Terrifier ride.
Do you think they just didn't have the budget to bring that set back? Because why didn't we see that? Wouldn't that have been a good time to see Brooke? Like, why didn't we see that shit?
Her going to dig up this sword.
to the Terrifier.
I don't know if necessarily it was about the budget so much, but it very well could have been. But I am wondering because he does bring back the Terrifier for the in the beginning. Because remember where Art's body is laying down, and when the cop looks down, like what he's examining when he hears that noise, it is the set where Sienna like fell through. She fell to the ground. You can still see like the blood stains of where she fell. That was that same set, just that one room portion of it. And that could have very well been where she had hid the sword. She could have gone there. She could have dug it up. I don't think it would have necessarily cost him that much, but this movie was supposed to be shorter. He promised us that this movie would not be as long, and he only just delivered on that promise. It's shorter, but it's still long as fuck. And so I'm wondering if he didn't eliminate stuff like that, like her going to dig for the sword, because of time constraints.
Yeah, I mean, but still, shit, man. I mean, you can cut stuff, but then you cut like this stuff, you know,
Yeah. No, yeah.
stuff that like we really would have wanted to see.
This is what I mean when I don't I think that Damien Leone is very, very good at his craft. Bravo to him for coming up with creative stories. And I think that Art the Clown is great. A lot of things, he does practical effects. I think that's great. I think that post production is not his strong suit. It's just kind of not. And I think he could have really used a little bit of help with post production. I think that it's like he didn't want to lose a lot of stuff, which I totally understand. I get it. But I think Terrifier 2 really, really suffered for that. And I think that he did a little bit better with this, but it feels like, and I don't know exactly what he cut, but I feel like something with Jonathan had to have been cut. Something is missing there.
Yes,
And maybe he cut something with the sword. I don't know.
because honestly, that's the last time we see Jonathan.
I mean, in any real capacity, yes. That's the end of like Jonathan's story. I think we see him like one more time in no real capacity. We get nothing more. We get no more story plot points with Jonathan.
Oh, we do see him one more time. We do see him one more time.
Yeah. And I just feel like something was missing. I don't know. But okay. So she comes in. Gabby is really trying to press her on what this present is. Gabby, for some reason, is under the impression that it must be for her, which irritates me. She just fucking irritates me, like, really, really bad. But because she thinks for her, like, Sienna really has to tell her, like, absolutely promise me that you will not open this. Because we learned from Gabby's mom that Gabby has a history of opening presents that are for her and then like sealing them up again so people wouldn't know. And so Sienna's like, well, please don't open this because it's not fucking for you. But Gabby's just so fucking annoying. So later on, so her aunt is cooking. She's making something with cereal. I don't know if she's making like Rice Krispie treats or something. But that's when Gabby mentions about how Sienna doesn't like cereal, which is most definitely because of the Art Krispies and Terrifier 2. And they all kind of laugh about it, including Sienna. But Sienna then asks Gabby to like go upstairs with her.
Play a board game.
Yeah, she's like, come with me to play a board game.
And the board game is Clue, bitch.
Right, because once they enter Gabby's room, Sienna's like, bitch, I never told you I didn't like cereal. And Gabby is stuck because Sienna didn't tell her that. So Sienna's like, well, how would you know that? So now Gabby has to admit that she read Sienna's journal cover to fucking cover.
How much of it did you read? All of it. God damn!
What is wrong with you? But Sienna was like, you promised me that you wouldn't. She's upset. She's like, I asked you not to do that and you did it. And that pissed me off. I fucking hate kids. Oh my God. So, okay. Gabby, she admits that she read the whole thing. Sienna's obviously upset. And I think that a lot of this is because Sienna doesn't want Gabby to really know what happened to her. She doesn't want to expose her to that, which is understandable. I mean, it's like a really crazy thing that happened to her, and Gabby is still pretty young. So because she doesn't want her to be exposed to this, Sienna just kind of ends up lying. She tells her that none of the stuff in that journal is true, that she has a mental illness and she hallucinates a lot and she doesn't know what's real and what's not often. All like so she just thinks that all of that is fake, including chopping off Art's head. She's like, none of that ever happened. She then makes Gabby promise that she won't tell a soul about what she read in her journal. Not her parents, not her friends, no one. She makes her pinky swear it. And I'm like, what is that going to do? This kid obviously fucking lies. I would not believe her.
She doesn't tell the truth. And she's fucking nosy. This was such a choice.
Yes. But okay, so Sienna loves her cousin, so she lets it go. And she tells her that they should just go play Pictionary. Okay. Meanwhile, we check back in with Art. So Art is still in his Santa Claus mode, and we see him heading into a sorority house. Mia's sorority house, to be exact. There's a party that night. It's the one that Jonathan was referring to earlier. It's the Beta Bash. Now, inside Mia's room, Cole, Jonathan's roommate, is there, and he is really trying to get in touch with Jonathan to make sure that he is okay after the incident with Mia and Sienna. And Mia is there just really like doubling down on being a fucking asshole. She doesn't think that she was being insensitive with Sienna. To which Cole says like she was 100% being exceedingly insensitive. But Mia thinks that Sienna, essentially, she's like, she should be over that because it happened 5 years ago. And Cole's like, I don't think that that's something that you ever actually get over, you fucking dunce. Mia still thinks that Sienna was out of line, and she's pissing me off, Dante. I couldn't wait for this girl to die. I couldn't. I really was. I almost wanted to like fast forward it to watch her die and then go back and watch it again because I just really find this character really grating. This movie's full of horrible characters.
Yeah, I still liked her more than Vicky.
I mean, yes, but a lot of that is probably because she got a lot less screen time.
I would have taken more of her than Vicky. Vicky is awful.
She is awful,
And Gabby, oh my god.
and she is also awful. But Mia, so she's saying all this fucking bullshit, and she's like, well, talking it out is therapeutic. And she says that she was basically doing Sienna a favor. And I was like, Damien Leone must really want us to want this bitch to die. It's too much.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. So while they're having that conversation, they don't know it, but Art is roaming the halls of this sorority house and he can hear them.
Is he looking for Jonathan?
I don't think he's looking for Jonathan. No. I just think he kind of like wound up here. So right here, he's kind of like going about his business when he hears Mia ask about Jonathan, and that's when his ears perk up because he's like, "Well, Jonathan, okay,
Ah.
need that." So Mia still wants Jonathan to do an interview. She says that she wants to talk to somebody who actually encountered Art the Clown, the most famous serial killer since Jack the Ripper. And Art, who's overhearing this, he's like super flattered. He's very touched by this. And he's like kind of aw shucks, really eating it up. It's a good example of that David Howard Thornton putting.
Like he's putting his stamp on it.
Yes.
Because it's silly.
It's very silly. These are the kind of things that make you like the character. So Cole is a little disgusted with her. And he's like, well, Jonathan was almost butchered. So, like, I don't think he'll want to do that. But Mia continues, and she says that she wants to know what it's like to be in the presence of that kind of evil, what goes through your brain when he is close enough to you that you feel his breath on your body. What does he smell like? When you look into his eyes, what do you see? Is there a soul or what? And with it being Christmas, Art is in the giving mood. So he's really kind of like, bet, girl.
Say less.
Exactly. When Cole says you sound like you want to fuck him, Art is hopeful for a minute. But when she says she doesn't, he makes that gesture like, well, forget you then. I thought that was silly.
Me too.
But Mia's being like really, really insufferable, and she's really pushing Cole to get Jonathan to do the interview. And she, of course, offers him sex, and he says that he'll see what he can do. So we're checking back in with Sienna at her family's house. Gabby and Sienna are sitting down to play a game of Pictionary, and Gabby is trying to invite her dad to play, but her dad is too caught up in a breaking story on the news. So it's about the bomb at the mall that day that killed 5, critically injured 6. They end up interviewing a guy who is also, again, horror legend Tom Savini, and he is a bystander that recounts the events of that day. So he says there was a guy dressed as Santa. He was giving out presents to kids before being escorted away by security, and then boom, big explosion. Sienna hears all this, and now she has a, I think, warranted meltdown.
Stressed.
My girl is at a breaking point, because this confirms that she did in fact see Art in a fucking Santa Claus costume. Like, this is all that she needs to hear. So she starts panicking, and she's trying to tell her family that she saw him. They're not safe. They need to leave. But of course they do not fucking believe her.
This is why I get confused with it. Did people forget that the Miles County Clown is a real thing?
Okay, so I have a lot of feelings about this. So if I'm playing devil's advocate, we have to think Sienna and Jonathan told everyone what happened. We know that that's the case because we know that Jonathan apparently testified at a trial on Sienna's behalf.
Right.
So the story that they told everyone is Art killed everybody, the Miles County Clown, killed all these people. He kidnapped Jonathan. Sienna came to save him. They got into this fight, and Sienna ended up cutting off his head. Mm-hmm. Now, apparently everyone believed what Sienna said, for the most part, in which case people really do think that the Miles County Clown is dead. So right now, if we're giving people the benefit of the doubt, what they're thinking is Sienna is suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, because to them, there is no way that this same killer clown is back to hurt them if, like Sienna and Jonathan said, she cut off his head. So
right.
In the real world, we have to kind of side with these people because this is what's logical to them. The only people that know about the supernatural elements of Art the Clown are Sienna and Jonathan. So it's asking a lot for people to just assume that a decapitated clown is now back killing people. So right. I do have to give them that. But I think the most unbelievable part of everything is Jonathan doubting her at all. That doesn't make any sense because Jonathan is fully aware of the supernatural elements of all this. Right. So that is just really annoying.
Everything with Jonathan should have been taken out the movie if they were going to do Jonathan like this. Because everything even connected to Jonathan is weird.
It is.
And just not tight.
I agree. Yeah. It's like something is missing with Jonathan's story. It's frustrating. I don't know.
I don't get why they add this to so many movies where it's like they have to be doubted. If she's like, look, it's the Miles County Clown. He's back. I saw him at the mall. I know you think that sounds crazy, but who the fuck do you think blew up the goddamn children? And I'm pretty sure they didn't show it, but I'm pretty sure that Tom Savini would have been like, his face was painted.
Yes.
That is a very, very distinct thing.
Yes.
But what Sienna was dumb was she should have punched somebody in the face and took the keys and left.
I agree.
That's why she doesn't have a podcast like we do.
Yes.
Riding.
Gone.
They'd be like, what's behind you? Miles County, nowhere near that place.
Absolutely not. Haddonfield, never heard of her. Woodsboro, who is she? Don't know her.
Crystal Lake, I don't swim.
Yeah. Crystal Lake, I don't speak that language. But then, oh wait, okay, let's keep going because something else pissed me off. Let's get to another part. Okay, so they're trying to calm her down, doing the whole like, nothing's wrong.
You're crazy. Nothing's wrong. We're safe.
Exactly. But Sienna is not having it. She's like, we need to call Jonathan right now. And by right now, I mean we needed to call him fucking 6 minutes ago. Okay. So she is not fucking around. And they're trying to be like, oh, no. She's like, call Jonathan. Okay. She is serious as a fucking heart attack. So they do call Jonathan, who is deep in a depression nap. But he wakes up, he answers the phone. Uncle Greg is trying to explain things, and he is pissing me the fuck off because he's like, I don't know. There was like a bombing. Your sister, she thinks she saw a guy. I don't know. She says we're not safe, but I don't know. No! Shut the fuck up. Sienna's like, give me the goddamn phone. So she takes the phone. Thank God.
I gotta do everything in this movie.
She's like, give me the damn phone. So she takes the phone. She's like, I don't have time for this shit. She tells Jonathan straight up, it's happening. I told you, you need to get here. So she's like, you need to come here. It's not fucking safe. Jonathan agrees to come over and he confirms with her that she has her sword. She's like, did you get it? And she's like, of course. I got it. We know that she got it. And this is what's crazy to me because it's like, why are you asking her that? Either you believe her or you don't. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And he's like, did you get the sword? Why would it matter if you got the sword if you think that she's just crazy?
I just don't like when we have to go through this roundabout of having to be like, well, you need to doubt what she's doing because, and I guess their excuse is like, well, she's crazy.
It's just too frustrating. I hate this trope in horror. It may be one of my absolute least favorite tropes, the like denying the protagonist, the gaslighting of the protagonist, just like the nobody believing them.
Yes.
It's just like the worst. And so that's like what's happening now. She tells Jonathan to come over, it's not safe. And so Jonathan is like, yes, I'm going to come over. You have the sword. Uncle Greg's going to come pick me up. Okay. So this pissed me off. Then Aunt Jessica takes Sienna to bed and she gives her something to help her sleep.
I hate her.
I hate her. But I'm pissed off at Sienna. Why are you taking sleeping pills? You're this fucking sure that Art the Clown is back that you are sending your uncle to go get your brother to bring him here. You're like, this family is not safe. Like an hour ago, you were like, we need to get out of here. He is going to kill us all. And you took a sleeping pill? What sense does that make? Did he just like kind of not know what to do with Sienna during this time? Or did he just really, really need her to go to sleep to get this dream sequence, which we're about to get to?
I think you know the answer.
Okay, well, let's keep going. So Aunt Jessica comes down after she gives Sienna a sleeping pill, which Sienna stupid fucking takes. She tells her husband, Greg, so she's like, you were right. Sienna is not well because they obviously do not believe her. And Greg says that they'll talk about it later. He's on his way to pick up Jonathan. So that's when Jessica heads into Gabby's room to check on her. Gabby is sad because she thinks that Sienna is going to go back to the hospital, which Aunt Jessica is making it seem like a very real possibility. But it's worrying Gabby that Sienna might be right about the Miles County Clown being back. But Aunt Jessica just assures her that that's like absolutely not the case. Meanwhile, back on campus, we're checking back in with Art essentially. So Cole and Mia are having sex in the shower when Art enters. They are completely unaware, and he goes in his big bag and pulls out a chainsaw, which we haven't given it props yet in this episode. The fucking quality of these bags that Art is carrying around is unmatched because my man had a fucking chainsaw.
I just feel that at this time when people are trying to save as much money as they can, getting a Miles County trash bag will keep you from having to buy more trash bags. They last. You don't have a double bag.
Never. This bitch is strong as hell. My man had a chainsaw in there.
We were marveled. We just absolutely marveled.
I mean, it really is astonishing. So he takes out the chainsaw and he sneaks over to the shower, which has a door that it's made out of like a frosted plastic. And he starts the chainsaw. Once he does, he starts slicing and dicing. And I mean that with my whole heart. This man slices and dices for like a good fucking 10 minutes. He, of course, slices the shower door to smithereens. Once it's gone, he slices Cole's hand off. Cole is trying to fight him, but ends up getting the fingers on his other hand cut off. Then he gets his leg partially cut off. It's kind of just kind of hanging by a thread, which causes him to like step on it and then fall to the floor, which Art thinks is hilarious. Art then turns his attention to Mia. So he slices the chainsaw at her and he chainsaws her boobs just like straight across horizontal. And then he slices her stomach, then her arms, her scalp, her jaw. I mean, he's cutting, cutting, cutting. When there isn't too much left of Mia, but she is still somehow clinging on to life, Art kneels down beside her and he takes her mutilated face in his hand and he turns her to look at him. He then takes off his decorative Christmas sunglasses and he makes sure that she can look into his eyes since she wanted to know so bad what it was like to look into a serial killer's eyes. He then takes the sunglasses and he puts them on her and he finishes her off by cutting her in half at the stomach. And that is the 15th on-screen kill.
Just imagine if she would have asked for world peace.
But she didn't. So that's what you get. So this whole time, Cole has been trying to crawl away. Not fast enough, in my opinion, but Art comes out of the shower. He finds him and he ends up grabbing Cole by the ankle and he rips off the rest of Cole's leg, the leg that's been hanging on by a thread. He smells the foot, decides that it's stinky, and he tosses it to the side. He then takes the chainsaw, and this is where we get the Dawn 2.0 kill.
Mm-hmm.
It's the gender equality Dawn kill. So Art starts slicing Cole up by the
Ass.
asshole. Yeah, he goes asshole first with the chainsaw, right up the crack to mid back. He then flips Cole over and he starts slicing, chainsawing to be specific, penis up, and they show it fully. It's like they not only show it fully, it's a floor angle. So you're down in there looking directly at it. It's slicing right up the penis area. He didn't want you to be confused as to what is happening right now. Art then keeps slicing up the middle, cutting Cole in half vertically. He goes all the way up from the penis to the chest. He takes one tiny little break to catch his breath because this is tough work, but ultimately he cuts Cole all the way up the middle and pries him open, like in half, which they show in very graphic detail. He also cuts Cole's arm off and he cuts his head in half. And realistically, Cole probably died a minute ago, but that's the 16th on screen kill. Once all the hard work is done, Art revels in what he's done by lying down in all of the blood and making a bloody snow angel on the bathroom floor. Now, during this time, Uncle Greg has arrived at Jonathan's dorm to pick him up. He calls Jonathan and Jonathan answers, but there is something strange about it. when Jonathan says he'll be right there, he kind of chuckles, and there's this very strange, distinct distortion in his voice that it seems like Uncle Greg notices but ignores. But we as the audience can just tell that like something is not right here. But we cut away and we go back to Sienna's family's home. So Sienna is still sleeping, but she's having a dream about her father. Now, this whole dream sequence is very important, I think, for a few reasons. So, the first part of the dream is Sienna with her father, and he's presenting her with a drawing of the warrior angel. So, everybody should be familiar with this particular drawing or the concept because this is the Halloween costume that Sienna made and wore in Terrifier 2, so 5 years prior on Halloween. So her dad is showing her the sketch, and then he's also explaining that the sword that the warrior angel is holding, it is magical and it is able to defeat any bad guy. Now, all of this is very heartwarming and it's very normal until Sienna goes to take the sketch from her father. Now, once she makes contact with it, they're both holding on to it. It's at this point that I think that maybe both of them, but I think at the very least her father. So it's implied that he has a vision. So I think that this is the first of his visions of Sienna in this warrior angel costume. So for him, he's seeing the future. It's this prophetic vision of her actually having this battle with art. It's the one that she has in Terrifier 2. Now, as he's having this vision, he is very serious. He's very focused. He's scaring Sienna. So once he's able to shake it off, he comes to, and that's when he tells Sienna that he'll always be with her. Now, while all of this is happening, there's also some banging noises that little Sienna is starting to hear from a door behind her in the dream. So at this point, she's pretty terrified. And her dad takes her, and he's trying to comfort her, and he ends up turning her around. Once he does that, we see that it's a full grown Sienna, and this is like the second portion of her dream. So it's a little strange. I'm just kind of going to describe it the way that we see it. So once she turns around, she is getting a glimpse of, I don't know if it is hell or some hellish landscape, but she sees this Virgin Mary statue, and it is holding this, presumably a demon, by a chain around his neck. The demon is wearing a metal mask, and it has these very sharp teeth. And this demon is actually acting as a blacksmith, and he is forging not only Sienna's sword, this magical sword, but also it looks like a new version of Sienna's warrior angel armor. Now, in Terrifier 2, we saw that Sienna made her own angel warrior outfit. It was just a costume that she made for Halloween. But now, I don't know if this is supposed to be a vision of the future. I don't know if this is supposed to be prophetic in any way. But it seems like this demon blacksmith is forging a new set of angel armor. After she wakes up from her nightmare, she thinks that she can hear her Aunt Jessica and Uncle Greg talking downstairs. So they're talking about her, and Greg is saying how dangerous Sienna is and how she needs to go back to the hospital. As Sienna sneaks downstairs to listen to them, she hears her uncle say that they should probably just go upstairs and smother Sienna in her sleep. And her Aunt Jessica agrees, and she's like, yeah, then we'll be free. And they keep repeating free until Sienna turns the corner in the kitchen and she sees that it is not, in fact, her aunt and uncle talking, but it is instead Vicky, or this entity that is inside Vicky. It is talking, imitating her aunt and uncle's voice. So this is where the movie really doubles down on Vicky being here. So Vicky is there and she's wearing a modified version of one of Art's black and white clown suits. She's painted her potato face black and white like Art, and she has crafted and placed a crown of thorns onto her head like Jesus Christ. This bitch looks a mess. She looks a hot ass mess. I just want everybody to know that. But she starts pointing at Sienna and she starts calling her crazy lady over and over and over again. And then when Sienna looks past her, she can see that Art is there and he is nailing Cole's mutilated body to the wall, crucifixion style, with ho 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 painted on the wall in blood. Sienna tries to run upstairs to warn everyone, but Art is hot on her heels, so they start fighting.
Because if there's two people who are on site,
It's Art and Sienna.
it's Sienna and Art.
Yeah.
We not friends. We just familiar. So let's fight.
And they do.
Because you came to my house.
He ends up hitting her in the stomach with a mallet, and he picks her up and throws her onto a glass table. Now, she is hurt because I'm sure that really fucking hurt, but she can see her sword still in the box under the tree. She wants to go for it, but she can't get to it fast enough. And Art is pissed. And this is not fun loving Art at all. This is like if looks could kill, dead as Oren Art. Like he is stone faced right now. He stands over her and he ends up hitting her in the head with a mallet so hard it knocks her out. The screen goes black. When Sienna comes to, she and her Aunt Jessica are tied to chairs in the living room. There is a bloody present wrapped in newspaper on a table between them, and Vicky is going through all of the presents under the Christmas tree. I thought this was silly. This was like the one thing that Vicky does that I like. She opens this Polaroid camera and she looks at the she looks at Sienna and she's like, "Cheese, bitch," and takes her picture. And I was like, that was really silly. Why did they put that in there? So Sienna looks around and she sees Art. He's standing next to Cole's body. He's cutting intestines out of Cole. And Vicky tells him cheese, and she gets a nice shot of him holding up the intestines. And then I just thought this sequence is so funny. It's like so serious, but also like so full of like comedic moments because Art then starts walking over, and as he's crossing the room, he makes sure to slap the shit out of Sienna in the back of the head, like somebody's like angry father. Then he's taking intestines over to wrap them around the Christmas tree, like Christmas decorations. And that's when he points to the topper on the tree and it's Uncle Greg's head. So that's when Vicky goes over to Aunt Jessica and she takes the duct tape off her mouth and she tells Jessica that if she screams, she's going to rip her fucking tongue out. Now, it's important to note here that Vicky is they establish, and they're going to get into it in just a second. Vicky is no longer Vicky anymore. There is like no semblance of Vicky left here. This is a demon that has inhabited Vicky, just like one that has inhabited Art. That's what you get from this, right?
Right.
And she is speaking as this demon. So she has this voice. I mean, she talks a lot. She talks a ton during this scene. It's quite a juxtaposition to Art the Clown, who really takes a back seat in the climax, which I wasn't a huge fan of this decision. But I think that maybe there were a lot of things, I don't know, that Damien Leone wanted to communicate. I'm wondering if he just needed somebody that could talk and knew that he couldn't have Art talk. So that's why he chose to have Vicky here. I don't know.
It was a drag to watch.
It was a drag. Because Vicky goes from being a secondary antagonist to being the primary antagonist here. So Art is really, really taking a back seat here, and I didn't like that. But When Vicky's talking, her distorted voice, also, it's the same one that we heard briefly on the call with Jonathan. So obviously she was like imitating Jonathan's voice. And Aunt Jessica must know that Vicky means business right now, because when the tape comes off, I thought she shuts her fat ass up. So what did you do?
So what did you do? You
I
sat there and you let him abuse your daughter.
okay, let's reel it in. Let's reel it in. Because that's from Precious, everybody. So Precious makes an appearance again. But yeah, but she does. She shuts up. She doesn't scream or anything. She just asks for Gabby.
She didn't scream or nothing.
Dante, it's not funny. I don't want people to think that we think that it's funny, because we know it's not.
It's just so easy to quote.
It is. You have to see it to really understand just how quotable it is. So Jessica just asks where Gabby is, and Vicky's like, I thought you'd never ask. And she says, Merry Christmas, Mommy. And Art rips the newspaper wrapping off of this bloody present that's on a table between them. And it's a small little cage, and Gabby's bloody skull is in it, pulpy skull, and rats are inside. They've eaten away all the flesh. Sienna is freaking out in her restraints, so Art walks over and picks up a mallet and starts knocking the shit out of Sienna, telling her to be quiet. Super aggressive. But Vicky is still taunting Jessica, and she tells Jessica that she's given her a present. Now she wants Jessica to give Vicky a present. So Jessica spits in Vicky's face, right in her fucking empty eye socket, and tells her to fuck her, which I deeply respect, because I know what it's like to want to spit in somebody's face. So good for Jessica for going out strong, because once she does that, Vicky is done talking. So this is when Art picks up a blowtorch and a long plastic cylinder. On his way back over to Jessica, he makes sure to slap the shit out of Sienna on the back of the head again. But then they take hold of Jessica. Jessica tells Sienna that she loves her, and she asks Sienna to please kill them both and make them suffer. But Vicky says, you first. And that's when they forcefully insert this plastic cylinder into Jessica's mouth, really hammering it in there, splitting her mouth open. Then they insert rats into the cylinder, and Art uses the blowtorch to force the rats to burrow down into Jessica's throat. Then Vicky goes over to a table. She picks up a knife and she comes over and she slashes Jessica's throat, and the rats come pouring out of the slit. And that is the 17th on screen kill. And it's insane.
That was enough for me today.
That was a lot. That was a lot. But that's when Vicky walks over to Sienna, who's obviously distraught, and she takes the tape off of Sienna's mouth, and she is kind of taunting Sienna. She's telling Sienna that she's no savior. Vicky then removes the crown of thorns that she made from her own head, and she forces it onto Sienna's head, moving it around a lot, causing tears, causing blood to flow down Sienna's face. It's very symbolic. There's a lot of Christian symbolism here in this scene. Vicky then tells Sienna that they're going to destroy everything she loves, and then she's going to destroy Sienna from the inside out. And she says, quote, just like I did this bitch. And she points to herself, because again, this is a demon speaking about this vessel that once was Vicky. But first, Vicky says she has a confession to make, and she says that the skull in the cage is not, in fact, Gabby. And this is true because Art brings out a distraught Gabby who is very much still alive. Sienna tries begging for Gabby's life, pointing out that she's just a baby, but obviously that doesn't faze Art. We saw him kill a child like 20 minutes ago. Instead, Art ends up picking up the pulpy skull and he walks it over to the mantle where he sits it down and he puts Jonathan's glasses on it. And that's when the horrible truth washes over Sienna. And at this point, Sienna is losing her mind because she realizes that Jonathan is dead. But that's what Art wants. It's what Vicky wants. So that's when Vicky tells Sienna to just let go. Everything she loves is gone. There is no God. And she says that she wants her to let go so she can let Vicky in, let this demon in. She ends up grabbing Sienna, and Sienna is overtaken briefly by, I guess, the demon's powers, but Sienna is able to resist the demon because she's strong. The demon is really fighting to get Sienna to let it in, but it deduces that Sienna has not given up, that she chooses to keep fighting because Gabby is still alive and she is something left to fight for. So she even says, like, this is the very last thing that Sienna has. So they lower Gabby to her knees and they are going to cut her throat in front of Sienna in order to completely break her. When Gabby tells Sienna that she's sorry that Sienna wasn't able to open the present that she got her. So Vicky's like, "Oh, well, that's not fair." So she asks Gabby which one of the presents was hers. And Gabby, being very smart, tells Vicky it's the one with the angels on it. So this is the present that is obviously Sienna's sword. So Vicky goes, she picks it up, and she asks Gabby if she wrapped it herself. And I thought that this was really silly. When Gabby says yes, Vicky wants her to know. She's like, shitty
Shitty.
job. Which is so unnecessary, but such an amazing addition.
I thought it was extremely necessary.
She needed to know. But Vicky is using the present to taunt Sienna. So she's asking her if she wants to open the present, obviously meaning before Gabby dies. She throws the present to Sienna to open it, but before she does, Art uses a mallet to bash Sienna's hands to like bloody pulps. Like he really destroys her hands. And then they make her open the present with these like meat sack hands. Sienna's struggling, and as she's struggling, Art is just like beating her with this mallet, trying to get her to hurry up. But Sienna does finally get the present open. And she looks at Gabby and she just says, "Best gift ever." And we as the audience see for the first time that it is Sienna's sword. She pulls it out and she uses it to slice Art's throat. She then throws it at Vicky, impaling her in the chest. She then comes over, takes it out, shoves it down Vicky's throat before pulling it out and ultimately cutting off Vicky's head. And that is the 18th on-screen kill.
Ah, marvelous.
I was very relieved. And I spent the next like 20 minutes praying she didn't come back. But Gabby then runs to Sienna and they hug and they have a heartfelt moment before Art jumps up with his chainsaw. He's not dead. So Sienna pushes Gabby out of the way and her and Art start battling. It is a sword v chainsaw battle and Sienna is not fucking around. Neither is Art. So Gabby tries to help Sienna, but Art coldcocks her, knocks her the fuck out, and goes back after Sienna. They are in a brawl and they are knocking weapons out of each other's hands. It's punching each other. It's getting really serious. At one point, Art even bites Sienna and then like pile drives her into the kitchen floor.
Why did he bite her?
Well, this is my thing. So he almost pushes her face into a chainsaw too. And I was like, this is not strange to me. We know that when backed in a corner, Art gets squirrely. He does not go down without a fight. He couldn't reach his gun or he would have shot her. But he's pushing her towards his chainsaw. So Sienna grabs him by the balls, yanks them shits. So he ends up letting her go. She tries to make it to her sword, but Art is fast, and he ends up driving the chainsaw into the table that she's under. I mean, like an inch from her head. And lucky for Sienna, it gets stuck there. He can't get it back out. So Art ends up picking her up and shoving her face into the open cavity that is Cole's body that is still hanging on the wall. Disgusting. He then pulls out some of Cole's intestines and he starts trying to strangle Sienna with them, but she is also not going down without a fight. She ends up chewing through the intestines and breaking them, which pisses Art off. So he just starts like hitting her on the back with these pieces of intestine.
That's so gross because intestines are full of fecal matter.
They are. I don't want to think about it, but yes, it is disgusting. So Art is like, fuck this, and he's going to grab more weapons when Sienna reaches her sword and ends up driving it through Art's stomach, just pushing it all the way through. So while all of this is happening, the blood from Vicky's severed head has like eaten a hole into the floor and it has opened a portal to hell. And Gabby, who was essentially kneeling there watching this happens, of course falls in because she did not have the wherewithal to get out of the way.
No, stop. Because she's doing some stupid shit, looking at her mom with a slit throat and a fucking pipe in it. She's like, Mom, Mom?
No, she's like, "Mom, wake up. Wake up, Mom."
Why is this character here?
Well, this is why it's really hard to believe that she is older than like 12. I refuse to believe that a 15-year-old
4.
would do something like this. It's a crazy, crazy thing. So she ends up falling into this portal to hell. So now Sienna has to choose to either finish off Art or go save Gabby. And so, of course, she chooses to go save Gabby.
Terrible decision, sir.
Yes. So Gabby is just like hanging on to like a piece of the floor, like she's hanging
Useless.
down. Yes. And so Sienna runs over and she offers Gabby the handle of the sword because all that she has is long enough. And she holds on to the blades and she's trying to pull her up, but the sword is really cutting into her hands really badly. And so, of course, Gabby ends up slipping and falling into the portal, sword still in Gabby's hands, and she disappears along with the sword, with the portal closing behind her, leaving nothing but like darkness behind. So then Sienna looks over and she sees not only is Gabby gone, but now Art is also gone. He escaped through the window. So she ends up dropping to her knees there. She pulls off this crown of thorns. She looks at her hands, and the deep cuts do end up healing themselves. And she vows that she is going to find Gabby. So then we cut to Art, who is waiting at the bus stop. On the bus that's coming, there's just one driver and one woman who is reading a book called The Ninth Circle, which is a nod to Damien Leone's short film. They then stop and they pick up Art, who is covered in blood, leaking blood all over the place. Initially, the woman is staring at him and his eyes are closed, but then they shoot wide open, unblinking, just staring at this woman. He pulls out his little bike horn, totally serious initially, but then bursts that big maniacal smile before honking his horn, and the screen cuts to black. And that is the end of the movie. So, kill count. So, there are 18 on screen kills and 24 total kills if you include the nurse that got her face eaten, that Art the Clown cosplay guy, the kid Timmy who got hacked up in the beginning, Juliet, if we consider her a victim, Uncle Greg, and Jonathan. And I'm not counting Victoria when she slit her wrist because it's a suicide, but yeah. So the movie has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 77% critic and 85% audience. and it has an IMDb score of 6.4 out of 10 with 39,000 reviews. So, fun facts: on the bus when Art gets on and that lady's reading the book The Ninth Circle, it's by an author called Rosemary Castevet. It's a reference to the original short film where Art first appeared, The Ninth Circle, and Rosemary's Baby, which obviously features the titular character Rosemary, but also, the characters with the last name Castevets, Roman and Minnie. So I thought that was a cute little thing. So another fact, so Damien Leone said in interviews that there were several big studios that showed interest in financing the movie based on the smash unexpected success of Terrifier 2, even without having a full script, but he ended up turning them all down because he did not want to be censored in any way. And he was very, very certain that no big studio was going to let him film the opening scene, which he describes as very controversial, which it obviously would be. Leon also said that the only reason that he can be so uncompromising in his depiction of gore is because he finances his own movies independently. So he has been able to create all the special effects himself to keep costs down. And so he's been able to avoid big studios breathing down his neck to make his movies more mainstream. He's not beholden to anyone. So he's able to get away with a lot more.
Which is very important.
It is important. And it's very admirable on his part to do that because,
To turn down the money.
yes, because I know that it would be easier to have the money. I know it'd be less work for him if he had a bigger budget, he had a bigger team, but he chooses to keep it small and do it himself. And it is really admirable. So I know that we kind of talked about this earlier. So when he was making Terrifier 1 and 2, Damien Leone stated in interviews that his crew consisted of only about 5 to 10 people, just depending on the day, with crew members working in every possible position. But for Terrifier 3, because Terrifier 2 did so well and it made so much money, he was able to have dozens of people on set every day with dedicated crew departments. And I'm sure that Terrifier 4 will probably be an even bigger production. So the Cineverse, who actually distributed the film, they only had one request of Damien Leone. They asked him to make the film 2 hours or less. Damien Leone, who again, remember, he is his editor, his own editor. He says that he recalls ripping out pages while filming in order to make the film shorter, realizing that it would just be way too long and he wouldn't have enough time to film the scenes. It would go way over this like time constraint that they were putting on him. So he says that the ending was much longer than it was, but that was something that ended up getting cut down a lot. And he really did try, and he almost did. The final editing, as we know, came in at 2 hours and 5 minutes. And I really, really appreciate that because I cannot imagine why that ending would have had to have been any longer than it was.
Right.
That was a big flaw with Terrifier 2. They stretched that fucking ending out. It was almost ridiculous at a certain point. She killed Art over and over and over again. Like, it was getting really exhausting. It was just kind of the same thing over and over and over again. And it made me like really, really ready for that movie to end. So I'm really happy that he cut this down.
I hate it in the Terrifier too.
Yeah, me too. So Damien Leone, in interviews, he stated that the Christmas theme for the movie, it was directly influenced by, there's these Tales from the Crypt episodes. There was one in 1972 and then they did a remake of it in 1989. They're called And All Through the House. So essentially, it's anybody that doesn't know, it's about a mental patient who is dressed as Santa. He goes on a killing spree. This woman is in her house. She is not a good person either, but she's trying to keep this killer Santa out of her house. And unfortunately for her, her kid ends up letting the Santa in the house, thinking it's the real Santa. But Damien Leone said that it's his favorite version of a killer Santa, and he made the cold opening for Terrifier 3 to pay homage to that.
That's the one when she kills her husband, right?
Yeah, she kills her husband, and then they have this serial killer Santa happens to see her, and so now he's trying to get in to kill her. And then this is the first horror movie since Saw 3, which came out in 2006, to receive the 18 rating in France, which is the equivalent of an NC-17 in the US, so it's no one under the age of 18 could be admitted. Finally, so that rat tube scene, that was a scene in the movie that actually made the actor David Howard Thornton nauseous, and he actually had to fight to prevent himself from throwing up on set when he was filming it. It's funny, if you tag David Howard Thornton, if you ask him a question, he's like really nice and really active on social media. I saw somebody made a post about that, him getting nauseous on set and almost throwing up, and somebody tagged him in the comments and they were like, David Howard Thornton, like, is this true? And he was like, yeah, it is. Like, I definitely almost threw up. And I thought that that was really nice. He just seems like a really, really nice guy. But yeah, so that is all I had for the fun facts. And so now, with all that being said, what do you give this movie? A hit or a miss?
I don't know what to give it. I don't. I don't think it's a bad movie. It's just not for me. I didn't like it.
That's fine.
It's long. There's parts of it that's good. There are parts of it that's good. It's not bad. But like when you say like a miss, it's like it didn't really miss its mark. I feel like if you like these movies, you're gonna like it.
Well, what is it to you?
These last two have been a miss compared to the first one. The first one was so good. And now it's not good anymore. It's long. It's a lot of stuff, a lot of lore, a lot of background.
I understand. It is a lot of lore.
It's not like a easy, just like chill movie. It's like, nah, dude, we got like 100 things going on, and it's like a sword, a magic sword. It's just a lot. So for me, I give it a miss because it's not my vibe. But if you like the second one, you'll like this one for sure.
Yeah. Well, I didn't think that I would think so, but I think I'm going to give it a hit. I think that Damien Leone has made leaps and bounds worth of progress as a writer, as a director since Terrifier 2. I mean, just in such a short amount of time. I gave Terrifier 2 a miss. I did not like it. A lot of that was because of the length. A lot of it was because of sloppy post production. But I think that he was able to improve so much and give a much better product. And when I was watching this one, I didn't ever really feel like it was, like, dragging. I think it did a much better job with pacing than Terrifier 2. I think that the ending was a lot better. I also thought that the practical effects were better in this one. I just think that, working with a team, outsourcing a little bit of the special effects makeup, the practical, I just think that it translated a lot better. And it's so refreshing to see practical effects in film. So I deeply respect that. I deeply respect him wanting to go that route. And so I'm gonna give it a hit. I definitely think that this is my favorite Terrifier after one. I think one was just something like really special.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think he did a good job with this one. I really do. I'm really hoping that he gets even better with Terrifier 4 and that he can bring it home and give us like a really good finale to this character. That's all that I have to say. So that was
It was
our
cute.
yeah, that was our Christmas episode, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope that everybody has a really good holiday season.
Yes.
And thanks for sharing another holiday with us. We really, really appreciate it.
We'll see you in the new year.
We'll see you in the new year.
Did you want to tell them about the social media?
Okay. We love to hear from you guys. Please follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook with the handle Did You Get That on Film? You can also email us at didyougеттhatonfilm@gmail.com. For our Spotify and Apple Podcast listeners, leave us a review as well as a rating. Reviews are the best way to support the podcast and help it reach a further audience.
That sounds great.
And that's it for this week. We hope to be back next week with a brand new episode. So until then,
Bye.